Hello and welcome. Now in this video you are looking at the website TechSmith, and TechSmith is where you would buy your legal copy of Camtasia. If you don't have a copy of Camtasia, all you'll need to do is to go to the techsmith.com website and click the Buy Now button. Now you can buy a download version or you can have a disk sent to you, and you can also have a maintenance agreement. Now what the maintenance agreement will do is it will allow you to have Camtasia upgraded for 50% of the cost of a new license. Typically you would have to pay the full price of an upgrade, but if you do the maintenance agreement, you'll be able to get that at half price, and then they've got some other benefits here also. Now the other thing you'll want to take note of is going to be the area for system requirements, and you'll find that in the leftmost corner. And if you go to this link, you want to make sure that your system matches up with these system requirements. And since Camtasia now installs on both Windows and the Mac, you'll want to make sure that you understand the individual requirements. And then there are some additional requirements here for Windows that you'll want to take note of if you're going to be using some of the add-ons. For example, you'll likely be using the add-on for PowerPoint. You want to make sure that you are able to use these, as well as the video recording equipment. So now if everything now checks out for you, and you don't have a current copy of Camtasia, then you can just click the Add to Cart button, and then you can actually go ahead and pick up Camtasia Studio. Now it's quite possible that you may have a previous version of Camtasia already, and if that is the case, then Camtasia will typically send you a message when you open the program giving you the option that you can actually go to upgrade. When you get this message, if you don't have the most current version of Camtasia, which is Camtasia 9, you want to click the Upgrade Now button. It will typically bring you to the pricing area, and you'll notice that it is going to be about half of the cost as if you were going to purchase it outright. Now the other thing is, of course, you can actually go ahead and get the maintenance agreement also, and then it'll add on an additional fee. Now once you've done that, you can click the Add to Cart button, and you'll be provided with the opportunity to get some other upsells. However, if you don't need them, all you need to do is either pick up the Camtasia upgrade and or the maintenance agreement. Now in some cases, if you wait just a minute, you'll notice that Camtasia or TechSmith will offer you a 5% discount, and there is no special science for you to get this discount. Typically they'll add it to your account if you don't check out right away. So once you have your 5% discount, if your pricing is what you want, then you can go ahead and check out. Now when you get your upgrade certificate, you are going to want to keep this information. And the reason is that Camtasia 9 will run side by side with any other Camtasia version that you have. So in other words, it's not going to replace version 8 or version 7 or whatever version that you have. It can actually work side by side with that other version. So you are going to want to take this information, put it inside of your password manager or wherever it is that you keep your licenses, as well as your emails. So once you've done this, go ahead and download the new version of Camtasia. Now if you're on a Windows PC, Camtasia 9 will download direct to your hard drive. Just click the Save button and Camtasia will start to download. Now you're going to see Camtasia in your corner if you're using Chrome. It's going to be in a directory if you're using Internet Explorer or Firefox. You want to go ahead and click the executable file and get started installing Camtasia. Camtasia will ask you if you want to accept the license terms, and you'll want to read them if you haven't read them and make sure that you understand the terms. Now a couple of things of note that you are agreeing to. One is that your license that you're purchasing is non-transferable. So technically, if you wanted to sell your version of Camtasia, you are not allowed to sell it, and you're agreeing not to sell it. The other thing you're agreeing to is that Camtasia can be installed on 2 of your computers to be used by one person, yourself, and you are technically not supposed to use them both at the same time. So if you want to run a production machine, you'll have to make sure that you're running that production machine at a point in time at which you're not using the machine that you are currently using. So once you've read through the license, you'll want to go ahead and accept the terms and then click Install. And then Camtasia will go through an installation process, and we're actually going to do this off camera. And once Camtasia has completed the installation process, we will come back in the next video. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. You are now looking at the open interface for Camtasia version 9. And when you open the program the first time, provided that you have put in your registration key, you will see that you can either start with a new project or a new recording. Now, when you start with new project, Camtasia is actually going to open up the editing interface. And typically you're going to get a screen that's going to ask you if you want to update Camtasia. You are going to want to say yes, and you'll be told that you're running the most current version of Camtasia, especially when you first start. Now, another way to start Camtasia is to start with a new recording. And if you open the interface and you click new recording, the recording interface is going to show up. And you'll be able to see where you are going to be able to record your screen or to record a PowerPoint. Now, the other thing you can do to start Camtasia is to open an existing project. Now, in this particular case, we have just opened or downloaded the new Camtasia, so we don't have any new projects in Camtasia 9. However, what we can do is we can open projects that we have created in other versions. In fact, if you go to any project that you have created in a previous version, you're going to notice that the icon has changed to the icon that's used with Camtasia 9. Now, that doesn't mean that your files have been changed to Camtasia 9 files. It only means that the icon has changed. If you open this project in Camtasia 9, you can actually update the document to be used with the new system. So for example, if we were to go and we were to take one of these files, which was created in a previous version of Camtasia, and we were to open it up, Camtasia is going to give you a message that this project was created in an earlier version of Camtasia Studio, and if you want to open it, you'll be opening it, but you'll be changing it so that it'll only open then in Camtasia 9. You will not be able to use this file again in Camtasia 8. So this is something that you'll want to be aware of with projects that you have created in previous versions of Camtasia. These are not backwards compatible. Once you have changed them over, you won't be able to change them back. So what we're going to do is we're going to say no. We're going to leave that document as it is. The one final thing that we'll want to show before we go to the next video is that if you have entered into the editing screen, you can actually access the recording screen also by going to the top left and clicking this record button. When you do that, then this button is going to show up and you'll recognize this as the recording screen. And those are all the basic ways that you'll be able to enter into Camtasia Studio. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now in this video, we are going to get familiar with some of the basic screen recording controls. Now, typically in Camtasia, what you can do is you can either open the entire program or you can open up just the recording screen. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're just going to open up the recording feature. When you open up the recording feature, you're going to have a dialog box that will allow you to customize your recording. There are going to be some basic things we want to take note of. One of the first things we're going to want to take note of is what mic we're going to be using in order to use our recording. And so you're going to use this drop down arrow and you're going to choose one of the microphones that you are going to be using. You want to use the best possible microphone with your Camtasia recording. And we'll talk about that in a future video, but you can actually designate which microphone you're going to use in this dialog box. The other thing you can do is you can actually designate your webcam to be used. If you have an external webcam, you can connect it. If you have one that's internal, you can connect it. So any webcam that you want to use with Camtasia 9, you can designate it inside of this recording screen. Now, in the select area, you get a chance to determine how you're going to record your screen. You can either record your screen in a custom size or you can record the entire screen. When you choose to use the custom size, what you're going to do is you're actually going to be able to record a certain area of the screen. You can see that here. You can drag this image to the screen and adjust it. If that's not what you like, you can actually click the full screen and record the entire screen. In either case, you can determine what you want your viewer to see inside of the actual window. And we're going to actually close this now. Now there are some menus inside of the dialog box. We're going to take a look at some of those right now. In particular, we're going to go to the capture area. And you'll notice that you can actually record your screen or record your camera. And you'll notice that you can actually use what's called a hotkey, which is the F9 key. And this is very important because you will not have to control your camera with your mouse. And if you want to just start your recording, you want to do that with a button, at the push of a button, you can do that with the F9 key. You can actually stop the recording with the F10 key. And those are going to come in very handy when you're actually doing your recording. Once again, you can set the area to record, and that's pretty much the same that we did when we selected the area. And then we can actually lock to application. And that means that we can actually lock the recording to a specific application. For example, let's say that all we wanted to record was the Excel application or Microsoft Excel. And if we have this spreadsheet open, what we would do then is just click lock to application, and we would be locking to the Microsoft Excel application, and it would only record Microsoft Excel and not anything in the background. Now in the next video, we'll review the effects menu, the tools menu, and the help menu. And with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to take a look at the effects menu. We have already taken a look at the capture menu in a previous video. So if you open the effects menu, you are going to see three options. The first is going to be for adding a system stamp. The next is going to be for adding a caption. Now the other is going to be for adding mouse click sounds and then the options. Now if you go to the options, that will actually control how you'll use these two. So we're going to take a look at the options menu first because that'll tell us how we control these two portions of the menu. When you open up the options menu, you're going to see that there is a certain way that you can actually dictate how you want the timestamp to appear. And you can actually have the elapsed time to appear. You can take out the time and date. So you can customize this. You can also customize the date and time format. Now the other thing you can do is you can actually write a caption in that will appear in your video. So for example, we can write in a phrase. Okay, so I've written in here, create video with Camtasia 9, and then I can determine how that caption is going to appear in the video. So for example, I can determine if that caption is going to appear at the bottom of the video. You can control where it's going to appear. You can put it at the top. You can put it in the middle. You can also control what the font's going to be. So we can change the font here to something else that we like. We can change the text color as well as the background color or shadow color. Now once we have something that we like, we can then click the OK button. And then we'll have a caption, and then we will have the options determined for our timestamp. Now we can also control what the sound effects are going to be. And what this menu will do is it'll determine how the mouse button sound is going to be. And so for example, if you click this button, you'll notice that there is a click. And you can actually determine how this is going to sound inside of your video. So once you have the combination that you like, you are going to click OK. And what this is going to do is now this is going to bring you back to the effects menu. And so now what we can do is we can determine if we want a system stamp to occur in the video. And we can do that by clicking this menu. And we can also determine whether or not we want a caption to occur. We can click that also. Or we can decide that we don't want either one of them, and we can uncheck them. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in the next video when we'll talk about the tools menu of the recording toolbar. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to take a look at the tools menu in the recording toolbar. And when we take a look at the tools menu, you're going to notice that you have Camtasia and Screencast here. Now Camtasia, when you click this link, this will actually show you the editing toolbox. So if I click this, we'll see the screen that we have seen before in the previous video. And so you'll notice that the editing field comes up. When we go to Tools and we go to Screencast, what will happen is that your browser will open up screencast.com, which is a website that will interact with your Camtasia. We will be talking about that in a future video. And there you'll see we have opened up to screencast.com. Now when we go to the Tools menu and we go to the Options section, you're going to notice 4 sections: General, Inputs, Hotkeys, and Programs. Now, all of these things will be here by default. And for the most part, you won't want to change them unless you have a reason to. We're going to focus on the hotkeys in particular. That will be the one that you'll probably use the most. Now, these hotkeys are going to be keyboard combinations that you can use while you're recording. So, for example, if when you're recording, if you want to pause the recording and you hit F9, the recording will pause. If you want to stop the recording and you hit F10, the recording will stop. If you want to use the marker and you hit Control M, you can pull up the marker, and the same thing with the screen draw. You can also select a region while you're recording if you choose a certain keyboard combination. Right now, one is not selected. If you want to hide the tray icon, you can do that by selecting a certain keyboard combination. Now, you can always use the default settings if you click Restore Defaults. Now, one thing that you will want to be aware of is that your recordings are going to be saved in a proprietary Camtasia format, TREC. If you want to save it to a more common format, you can do that with the AVI format. But for the most part, you will probably be using the TREC, and that is what we will be using during the duration of this course. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to talk about the recording toolbar, and we're going to talk about the help menu. Now what you're going to notice is that you can get specific help for the Camtasia recorder, or the recording toolbar, which you're looking at here. You can access tutorials, technical support, or you can send feedback to TechSmith. Now, one thing that you'll want to note about Camtasia, whether you are looking at the recording toolbar or you're looking at the editing screen, is that you can get specific help for everything that you have purchased from Camtasia Studio or from TechSmith. And you'll notice that when you come to the editing screen, you'll see that you can actually sign into the software where you have Camtasia Studio. So what you'll want to do here is you're going to want to connect to the TechSmith server. Once you enter the email address that you have associated with your software, you're going to want to put in the password that you created. Once you've done that, then you'll notice that your email address will be at the top. Your TechSmith account will be listed as part of your Camtasia software. Now this will mean that when you access technical support, you will actually be able to get specialized help. So we're going to go ahead and click technical support right here. Now in most cases, you should already be signed into the TechSmith website. If you're not, you want to go ahead and sign in at the top right here. And if you have any problem whatsoever, you can submit a ticket to TechSmith to help you to sort out your account. Now, what's important about accessing your TechSmith account, and let's go ahead and enter our personal account. You'll notice here that anything that you've ever purchased from TechSmith is actually listed along with the software key. In particular, you'll notice that here is our Camtasia 9 license that we can see right here if we ever need the key for any reason. And this is important in case we have to move the software to a new PC, or if we have to use it someplace where our personal PC is not available. Now, if you have a maintenance agreement, it will be present inside of your account online, and then your account will have all of your pertinent contact information. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to be talking about the recorded inputs. Now you're going to notice three separate pieces of the recorded inputs. The first you'll notice on the left hand side is your camera, and there is a drop down arrow here. If you click that arrow, you're going to notice that you've got all of the webcam options that you can use on your particular PC. You are also going to notice that there is an options section. Now when you click this options button or link, it's going to take you back to the options screen. And we actually do need to do this for the camera. So let's do that right now. So if there's anything in particular that you'll want to change about your device properties, and this is going to be specific to your device or your formatting. And again, this will be specific to your particular device. If you change that device, each one of these are going to be different, and you can actually change the settings for each individual device when you're going to use it with Camtasia for a particular recording. Now, when you leave this setting and you actually click OK, this is the setting that's going to be there for the next recording. And so this will effectively be your default setting. If you ever want to go back to the default setting, you'll come back to this page for inputs and click Restore Defaults. You'll also notice that there is an audio button. You click the down arrow and you'll see all of your microphone input options. If you have an internal microphone, if you have an external microphone, everything that you have plugged into your personal computer, you will see that option here. Now the other thing that you're going to see is that you can choose to record the system audio. So for example, if you have audio playing in the background on your PC, you can actually record it. If you have something that is going to make some kind of audio sound, you can actually record that into your video. This is going to be especially helpful if you are recording a webinar of some kind and you want to make sure that you're getting it. You will want to record your system audio. And just as you did with the camera, you have options here. It's going to take you back to the options menu. And again, what we can do is we can adjust the level of the microphone. We could have more audio going into the recording or less. We can actually change the audio. And every audio setting we're going to be able to change through this audio button. If you ever want to go back to the default setting, you can click Restore Defaults. The one other thing you're going to notice is that your capture frame rate is 30 frames per second as the default setting. You can actually change that and make it less if for some reason you cannot process a video at 30 frames per second. You can go down to 15, 10, or 1. But it's advisable to leave this at the default setting. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. Now we can also control the audio input from the front of the recording toolbar. We can adjust that audio. And that is all that you'll need to know to get started with your recorded input session. Now you'll notice here that this, if we hover over this area, that we have our webcam, or what is the default for our webcam. And we can actually see what our webcam is actually going to show people by hovering over this button and depending on which webcam we have selected. So if we want to know what our webcam is going to look like wherever we have that webcam, we can hover over this button and this will give us a preview in real time. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to be talking about the select area portion of your recording toolbar. And if you go to the drop-down menu, you're going to notice a couple of sections. You're going to notice a section that says widescreen, standard, and recent areas. Now, widescreen and standard represent the aspect ratio. And in most cases, video that is done and posted to YouTube and other common forms of video sharing, they're going to have a widescreen aspect of 16 by 9. That would mean that you're either going to shoot in the highest resolution at 1080 or 720 or 480. But you want to make sure that you're matching the widescreen aspect of your screen. You can also shoot in a standard aspect. And again, this really depends on your screen. You can either shoot in a higher resolution or a lower resolution. You are now looking at PowerPoint, and one of the things that you'll notice if you go to the design section of your PowerPoint and you go to the slide size, you will notice that you can either choose the standard aspect or you can choose the widescreen aspect. And again, this is how you will want to match your PowerPoint presentation with your actual video or your actual screen. Now, when you use the wrong aspect ratio, what can happen is that your video can appear stretched or out of proportion. So when you are watching a video that has been recorded in the 4:3 aspect ratio, but you're watching it on the wide screen, it can either be stretched or it can have the sides cut off or truncated. So again, you want to make sure that you're going to record in widescreen when possible. And if not, if you're going to use the aspect ratio of 4:3, you want to record in as high a resolution as possible. But in many cases, the most common format is going to be that you'll want to use the 1080 or 720 aspect ratio within 16.9. Once again, one thing that Camtasia will allow us to do is to lock to a particular application. And in this particular case, we can lock to the calculator if we want to record just the calculator. If we want to make sure that we're not locked to an application and we want to select the area, we can just push the custom button. We push the custom button, and as we have discovered, and as we have discussed in a previous video, we can move this screen around to determine where we're going to actually record. And if we're just going to work with the full screen, we can do that by clicking the full screen button. The one last thing that you'll notice about the recording toolbar is going to be particularly helpful if you use 2 monitors or 3 monitors or multiple monitors. The recording toolbar can be moved to one of your other screens. So if you wanted to focus on recording the screen that you're looking, you can actually do that, and you can actually remove this recording toolbar any place that you actually want by just clicking your mouse and moving it where you want it to be. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're actually going to go through a brief recording process so you can get an understanding of what's actually going to happen when you hit the record button. Now we're going to record the screen that you're looking at in front of you. And in order to do that, we're just going to hit the red record button if we have all of our settings in place. And we hit the red record button. You'll notice that we get the opportunity to change our caption. So we'll call that Create Video with Camtasia 9 Test. And then we'll click OK. Now we're going to see this throughout this course because we're using 2 forms of Camtasia Studio in order to record the course. You will not see this error message. So just to get rid of the error message, I'm going to click OK so that we can then see the countdown before we actually start recording. Once again, this you will not see in your recording process. We're going to click OK. Then you're going to see Camtasia Studio start the countdown. And right now, we are now recording our screen. Now, one thing you're going to notice right away is that the recording toolbar is no longer visible in front of us, and it's actually hidden down on the toolbar. So it actually goes away, and it appears at the bottom. If we want to see what's actually happening with our recording toolbar, we can do that, but it's going to bring it into the screen where our recording is. Now, let's do that right now. Now you'll notice that this is actually now going to be part of the recording. Now what's happening on the toolbar is that it's actually counting the elapsed time. If we have our camera showing, it's showing, and it is actually showing us where we can actually pause the recording and stop it. Now once again, we have configured hotkeys in order to do this, and we'll actually do this in a future video where we'll show you how the hotkeys are actually going to work. So now we're going to go ahead and minimize this so that the sample recording that you see will actually show this screen. Now the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually just go to youtube.com and we're just going to start a video. Now when we start this video, there is actually going to be sound, and that sound will actually be part of the video. So we're going to now just go back to the screen here. And once again, this video is now still recording. Now, when we're complete with this recording, we can either hit the F10 button as our hotkey, or we can just hit stop. Now, once again, you'll notice that this toolbar is not appearing. If we bring it into our video, it'll appear here. And we don't want to do that in order to stop our actual video. And that's the case where we want to have our hotkeys. We want to use our hotkeys so that we do not have to go and pick up this toolbar in order to stop the video. Of course, what we can also do, remember, is we can put it onto another screen if we're using a second screen, either to the left or to the right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click stop. And then what's going to happen is Camtasia is going to start making this into an editable video. So you'll notice that the editing screen will come up and Camtasia will actually place the edit onto the toolbar. Now we will go through an editing process in another video. You'll also notice that the webcam was actually enabled and is in the corner. We can actually remove that webcam from the recording by just going to delete it. Okay, so now once we have completed this, you've actually gone to see now some of the basics as to how it's going to work. We will walk in depth through how you're going to use Camtasia to record your screen, or to record a PowerPoint, or even to record your talking head videos. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. You are now looking at a sample video that we're going to be shooting, and we're going to actually shoot the recording of a PowerPoint presentation. And what you're going to notice is that as we get ready to, or as we're previewing our recording toolbar, you'll notice that the audio is going in, and we're using the microphone, we're using our external mic. What we're using right now is we're using one of the system webcams. We're actually going to change that. We're going to turn that on to our webcam. And that's going to actually make the presenter viewable. Now, this is now blurred out at this point, but you'll notice that this is a camera and that the person is actually going to be visible when you hover over it. The other thing we're going to do is we're not going to have a timestamp. So we're going to take this and we're going to get rid of the annotations. And then we are now ready to start with our video. Now, in a later video, we're actually going to show you a couple of ways that you can actually record PowerPoint presentations, but we're going to shoot this video so that we can then get familiar with the editing interface. So in order to get started, we have our recording toolbar set, we have our mic ready, we have our webcam ready. We're now ready to record. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to hit the record button. Okay, so you'll notice that the Camtasia is now not visible. And in order to record this presentation, what we're going to do is we're just going to go and we're going to make sure that our slide is the right dimension. And then we're going to start our slideshow. So we're going to advance the slides, and we would actually talk through this, and we're going to just continue the PowerPoint. We complete the presentation, and now that we are complete, we can then stop our video. And we can do that by getting the camera back here and then clicking the stop button. And so now our video is on these two tracks. And what we're going to do now is we're going to get to know some of the features on the actual editing screen. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video we are going to look at some of the basics of the editing screen. And this is where you will have your projects and where you will do your editing. Now you're going to notice right away at the very bottom of the editing screen, you'll see that your video is down in two basic components. You'll see that one component is primarily audio, and it actually says audio there. And it'll actually look like audio because you can see the peaks and valleys in the way that I actually spoke when we were recording the video. The other is the screen, and that's where you see this particular track. And you'll see that this is going to be primarily the video. Now, when you do take a look at the elements on the timeline, one thing that you can do is you can right click this element, and you're going to notice that there is a link here that says separate audio and video. When you click that link, what's going to happen is that you will see that all of the audio is now separate. So for example, you will see that what appears on the screen is actually here. What is heard in the system in audio is now in one track, and what is now recorded is now on one track, or what is spoken into the microphone. And all three of these components actually make up your video. You can take out any component that you want. So for example, if you were to have some kind of audio noise come into your background or some kind of music that you didn't want there, you can actually take that out through the system audio on your timeline. You can actually edit the entire piece, of course, by keeping them together. So for example, if we wanted to go backwards, we could go back and do the undo button. And that'll actually put those two pieces back together. Now the timeline has a couple of elements. You're going to notice that the timeline has markings at the very top, and those represent the seconds. You'll notice that you have a scroll or a cursor bar that will actually take you through each component of the video. So as I drag this cursor, you're going to notice a couple of things. You're going to notice that this indicator moves through to the end of the video. What also is going to happen is that the video is going to advance, and you'll notice that we move it backwards. So both of these features make it easy for us to go in and actually do the editing of a particular video. We can actually play the video, and what we're going to do right now is I'm going to hit the Control Home button. It's going to take me back to the beginning, and what I'm going to do is hit the play button. And you're going to notice, and you can actually hear some of the audio in the background. And what's happening here is that the editing screen is going to allow us to listen in real time to the video that we just created so that we can hear things in order to edit them. But you can do it visually by looking at the timeline. Now another element of the timeline is that if we want to take a look at the timeline as a whole, we can actually reduce the size without changing the nature of the timeline. We can do that by using this measuring rod. If we click the minus, you'll notice that the timeline gets smaller on our screen so that we can see the whole thing. If we need to stretch it so that we can see something a little more in depth, we can stretch it using the plus. We can actually delete the entire audio portion from the timeline by highlighting the audio and then clicking the delete button. Then the audio is gone. If we want to go backwards, we go back to the undo button and it's back there. We can do the same thing on the timeline with the screen capture, and we can actually hit the delete button. It goes away, and then we can hit the undo button and it will come back. So the timeline basically gives us a glimpse of our entire video and what's happening. And anything that you don't want to have in it, Camtasia allows you to separate it into a track, and then it allows you to then delete the portion that you don't want there. So if we want to take out the system audio, we can. So in our next video, we'll take a look at another aspect of the editing screen. We have now looked at the timeline, and you've got a basic orientation as to what it does. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in the next video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to do a brief overview of some of the timeline tools here. And these are going to be tools that you're going to be using in the editing process. And if you recall from the last video, we actually took out the system audio. And one thing that we can do here is we can actually remove this track so that we can have the audio and video together. So let's take a look at each of these individual tools. Now the first thing you're going to notice is that there is an arrow, and this is going to be an undo tool. And all this does is what the undo tool traditionally does in a Windows program, and that is that if you click it, it'll actually undo your last action. And this can be a good way of being able to go back and retrace your steps if you're going to do editing. Now you can actually redo the last action by clicking the redo arrow. And that's for any action that you take along the timeline area. So if you add something and you want to take it out, you want to go back, you can use the undo and redo command. Now you also have here the cut command. And the cut command can be useful if you are going to take out anything in your video that you don't actually want there that's in a section. So for example, we can actually pull the cursor to a certain point in the video, and then we can then expand the cursor, and we can actually have an entire section of the video, and we can click the cut command, and that entire section will then no longer be in the video. If we want to go back, all we have to do is click the undo button. If we want to return the cursor to its original state, we can double click the cursor. If we want to return the cursor to the home area, all we do is click Control Home. Now the other thing that Camtasia has is it has a copy and paste tool. And Camtasia will actually go to the place where the cursor is, and it will paste whatever you have in your clipboard. So for example, if we Control End and pull our cursor all the way to the end, we can then click the paste command, and you'll notice there that there is a portion that will actually be there, and this is something that we had in the toolbar. Of course, then we can actually go back and undo it and then bring our cursor back home. Now, one last thing that's important to show here is the split command, and this is going to come in handy when we want to take certain actions on the timeline for a particular section of the video. So for example, if we pull our cursor to a certain point, we highlight the places on the timeline, and then we click the split command, Camtasia will literally split the video. And you'll notice that the split is going to be there, and you'll see a little line there that indicates that that portion of the video can be split. We can then pull it to another portion, highlight the video again, and one of the ways that we re-highlight the video is we can hit the control button and then click the mouse, then hit the control button and click the mouse, and then we can then click the split button. And once again, this is going to come in handy when we do transitions. It's also going to come in handy if, let's say, what we wanted to do is we wanted to raise the audio on a specific portion of the video, but we didn't want to raise it on another portion. We could actually do that by splitting up the timeline. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go back and we're going to undo both of those actions. Now, one thing that we'll need to do when we're editing is, in some cases, we'll need to see the timeline differently. And we can actually reduce the size that we see on screen by using this measuring bar, and we can actually increase it, decrease it, and increase it. And this will help us when we need to do specific audio editing or even specific video editing in a certain place, and we need to get it so precise that we need to stretch out the audio so we can have our cursor in the exact place where things began. Now you'll also notice that there is a marker here, and we will actually discuss that in a separate video, as we will also discuss quizzing. The one final aspect of the timeline that you'll want to know about is if we were to click just the video portion, what we can do is we can click the properties, and we can get the properties of that particular video. In this case, it's the audio. If we click the video portion, we can actually get the properties of the video. Now, when we do that, there are some aspects of the video that we can actually customize, and we can do that from the properties screen. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. In this video, we are going to be discussing the marker function. And you'll notice down near the timeline, if we go to this drop down arrow, you'll see that there is a marker command there. Now we can either make the marker bar go away, or we can make it come back, and you'll see it visible there. And the marker function allows us to mark places on the timeline, either where we want to create a table of contents for our individual video, or where we want to come back and we want to do something to the timeline. So let's say that there is a special element that you want to edit at a particular point in the video. Well, what you could do is you can mark it where the cursor is, and all you need to do is to go up here and then left click. That'll mark the area. You can then name that, and you'll go up to the right hand side and you'll put in here whatever it is, and you'll see the name there. You can come here and you can do the very same thing again. Just click inside of the marker area. And being able to mark the timeline can be extremely handy when you are actually doing the editing, so that you don't have to go back and redo entire portions. Once you note something that you're going to have to actually do something on the timeline, you'll just want to go and mark it, just like we're doing here. You can also do this by hitting Control M, and that'll actually create a marker wherever your cursor is. Now let's say that you actually want to mark things while you are recording, and that would make it especially handy. So let's take a look at the recording toolbar. The one thing you're going to want to make sure of is that you have the effects toolbar available. And you can do that by going to your recording toolbars, make sure that the effects are ticked, then click OK, and then you're going to start the recording button. And then while you're doing your recording, what you can do is you can click marker when something happens, or let's say that you're not saying what you want to say in the video, you can click marker, and you can continue to click it, and these markers will appear on your timeline when you actually get ready to edit the video. And this will actually help you to know where to actually go to actually do the edits that you need to do. Of course, you can also use an alternative that we'll be talking about in a future video on editing specifically, but you can use the marker command to your advantage as you go. It's a great way of being able to mark things on the timeline so that you will actually know what's happening. Now, if we want to delete a marker, we can actually go back to the marker and click delete, and then our markers are no longer there. If we want to put them back, we can use the undo command. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we want to discuss very briefly another use for the markers that we talked about in the previous video. And what you can do is you can actually create a table of contents for each individual video. And you can do that by marking your timeline. And for example, we're just going to move the cursor all the way back to the home area. And let's say that you got to the first portion of your video and you wanted to mark this as a point that you wanted people to know that it was a certain information point in your video. Well, you could actually mark that with a marker. And obviously what you want to do at each marker point is you want to write in what the table of contents point is going to be. If this is going to be chapter 1, you want to write that in. And you can write it in as you edit. Point number 2 can be chapter 2. It's important to note that only certain kinds of videos are you going to be able to use your table of contents. And let's take a look right now. In order to get to the final preparation of our video, we go to the share, we go to custom production, and then we click custom production. And what you're going to notice here is that Camtasia will give us the option of using a smart player. This is an option that we'll be able to actually use our table of contents. If we choose any of the other formats, we're not actually going to be able to produce our video with a table of contents. And you'll see that as you progress through the final portion. And you'll notice here that this video can have a table of contents and have a searchable table of contents. But we'll talk more about the production options in future videos. It's important to note that for this video, we want to make mention that you can actually use markers in your timeline to denote when you want to have a portion of that video noted in a table of contents. And you can mark it and keep it marked as you produce the final video. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to add quizzes to the timeline. We're going to first start by removing the chapter markings. We're going to do that by going to the modify command, going to markers, and then removing all markers. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn this drop-down menu to quizzes. And in the same way that we added markers to the timeline, we can go to pull the cursor where we want to add a quiz. And then we can then click this green button, which is going to be, and you want to do it online with where the quiz is. So you're going to do that right here. So where the channel is, where you see the quiz, that's where you're going to click in here to add your quiz. So what we're going to do with each quiz is we're going to determine the properties of them. And you can do that in this area. You go to the properties. And if you want to do a multiple choice, fill in the blank, or true, false. In many cases, what you will probably be doing is you will be doing a survey. And if you want to put survey questions at certain points in the video, you can actually do that, and the video will not advance until your client or customer actually finishes the question. Now, when you put these videos together, you will not be able to host them on YouTube. You will need to host them either on your website or on screencast.com. So we have just taken a brief look at how you put quizzes on the timeline. We will go into detail as to what these quizzes mean and how you turn them into surveys so that you can reach your target customer. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to take a little more time with the elements on the side panel. And we're going to go a little more in depth into what they do, as each one of these things will affect what you are doing inside of your video. One of the first things we're going to do is we're just going to clean up our desktop a little bit. So we're going to remove one of these tracks, just so that we'll have the two tracks that we're working on. Now, when you click the media panel, what you're going to notice is that you'll see the media panel go away. If we click it again, the media panel will appear. And what's in the media panel is any recording or any media that we're actually working with. So, for example, at the very beginning of this course, we recorded a video and it automatically populated into the media bin. And that always happens when you do a recording in Camtasia. If we wanted to add to this, we would import a media file into the bin. So, for example, let's import a media file. And we can do that by going to this plus, or we can go to the file, and we can go to import and import a particular media. So in this particular case, let's just import some media that we might have elsewhere. So we'll click the plus button, and then we'll choose whether or not we import the media or import something from Google Drive. So we will choose something from our hard drive. We'll click open, and then that media will appear in our bin. If we want to pick something that we have recorded previously, we can go to the file area, we can go to import, and we can actually import other recordings that we have done. Now with the media bin, this does not actually do anything to the actual recording until you put it on the timeline. So when you decide on where you want it to appear in your video, all you would do is you would right click this and then add to the timeline at the playhead. And what you're going to notice is that it will appear on a third track. And what that means is that you're going to hear this audio play right on top of all of the other audio. If you wanted to not hear some of the other audio, if you recall, all you'd have to do is highlight that track and delete it. We'll bring it back. And if we were to delete this track, it would no longer be on the timeline, but it would still be in our media bin. So the media bin allows us to work with recordings and allows us to work with everything that we're going to be using in our editing process. Now, the last thing that we'll want to do is something that we haven't done previously in this course. we're going to actually save our project file. And this will preserve the work that we have done so far. And you want to save often because when you are actually doing editing, what you don't want to do is have to go back and redo editing over and over again. So one of the ways in which you control that is you would actually save your project file. So in order to do that, you would go to the File area and you would click Save As the first time. So we're going to save this as a name that we'll remember. Now you want to take note of how this project file is named. It's actually going to be named something different than if you have used previous versions of Camtasia. It will not look like something that you've used before. And this is proof that if you want to use previous versions of Camtasia, the two are not compatible unless you convert the file forward to version 9. You actually cannot convert this version back to a previous version. So in this particular case, we're going to call this course file 1, and we're going to click Save. And when you completed this, Camtasia will actually let you know that your project has been saved on your hard drive. Now, they will give you the option of not showing you this message again. It's suggested that you allow this message to be seen because this will assure you that your project has actually been saved. If you don't get this message, you'll know that the saving process has not been completed and that you might want to try it again. So in this particular case, we've seen our Camtasia project file has been saved, and so what we're going to do is we're going to click OK. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to go to the other side of the media bin, and what we're going to find is we're going to find the media library. The media library has a number of effects that Camtasia, when you purchase the program, gives you in order to enhance your video. And so each one of these can be dropped right into your presentation, and we'll show you how to do that right now. So for example, you'll want to go through each one of these, but they all work basically the same way. So let's start with animated backgrounds. And so you'll see here that you have ones called floating boxes. And what you can do is you can right click and you can add it to the timeline at the playhead. Now what you'll notice here is that it goes on to a third track. When you add on a new animation, a good practice would be to go to the track and rename the track. So in other words, we would go and rename this track to boxes. Now in order to alter the box, all we need to do is to drag the timeline in and then to place on the box whatever we want to place it in. In order to preview it before we go to the timeline, all we need to do is to right click it and then click Preview. And you'll be able to see what this animation is going to look like. When you decide that you do not want to have this animation, all you need to do is highlight it and delete it. Bring your cursor back to the home space, and then you can add another one. We'll preview it. That's not the one that we want. We will take a look at another one. We'll preview it. And then we'll close this one. And then once again, we can add it to the timeline. We can rename our track. So in each case, you'll want to take a look at the different elements. You want to preview them and then add them to the timeline. Now, one thing you'll notice is that there are properties to each one of these elements. And you can do different, and you can alter them in different ways. For instance, you can turn them to give them a different look or revert them back. We can make them more opaque or more invisible. So you want to take a look at the properties to change the image to be what you want. If you want to do something to the image, perhaps you'd like to write on the image, well, all you'd need to do is to add on an annotation. And what you'll notice when you add on the annotation is that it's going to be on a different track on the timeline. It's going to be the same length as the apartment, but we can actually lengthen it or we can shorten it. So you have a lot of flexibility with the library, and you can do a lot of different things. Anything that you want to do in terms of being able to denote something that you see that you want to illustrate to your audience. So we're going to delete this text and the apartment. And we're going to delete these tracks. And we're going to go back to the media bin. Now, one useful factor, and you'll want to go through each and every one of these media library pieces, and you will want to take a look to see how they can be used in your videos. Now, all of the other graphics are visual in nature, except for the music tracks. And in this particular case, these are music tracks that are royalty free and you can use them in your videos. You can preview them and you can add them to the timeline. You can alter their timeline. For example, you can take this particular audio, you can lower the volume. You can do that in the properties. And you'll notice that when you lower the volume, you can actually see that volume visually. So if you want to play background music, you can use some of the clips in your media library. So in each particular case, remember that the process is going to be that you'll want to preview it first. Then you'll want to put it onto the timeline. Then you'll want to drag your cursor into the timeline, and then you'll want to alter it. Lastly, as we leave the media library, you'll notice that Camtasia has given you something called lower thirds, and this is a way of identifying yourself or identifying something that you see on the screen. In some cases, when you have a talking head video or it is a video of a person talking, you can actually add in an identifier. For example, let's add in the lower third. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag into our timeline. And then what we're going to do is we're going to edit this. And we can double click the timeline. We can change the wording. Okay, we can change the color. Once again, remember, we're going to look at the properties. We're going to change it. And we can reposition any of the library options on the screen there where we want them. We can also determine how long they're going to appear. And we can do that by lengthening the time that they appear or shortening the time. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to take a look at the annotations element. And if you go to the left side menu and you click on annotations, you're going to notice there are going to be 5 different panels here. And the annotations actually give you another element that you can place onto your video at different points in the timeline. So, for example, you'll notice that in annotations, you'll find the text element. So if you want to write something on your video to appear, you can do that by dragging this element onto the track. And when you do that and you actually move your cursor, you'll notice that the element will show up inside of the presentation. So in this particular case, we can move this element any place that we want. And as always, we can actually change the element or the nature of the element in the properties area. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the color of the writing. And we can change that in this particular case to black. And you'll notice that that'll change in that case. What we can also do is we can also move this element to a point in time in the video that we want it to show up. So for example, let's say that we didn't want this to appear until midway through the video. We could do that. And so this annotation would not appear until that time. And so there are several ways for us to alter our animation, and all of them will take place inside of the properties area. Now, we can actually do more than one annotation. So for example, if we wanted to do an arrow, all we would need to do is to drag that arrow either into the box or we can drag it onto the timeline, either one. And we do that. What we're doing here is we are making this arrow a part of the video. And of course, this arrow has an element that we can change. We can make the timing of this element independent of the other one that we placed on the timeline. And you'll notice here that this is going to be on the video longer than the other element that we placed there. So annotations give us lots of flexibility when we want to add things to our video to give us more ways of highlighting things that we want our viewer to see. In the second panel, we have arrows. And arrows work in the very same way. We can drag those arrows onto the timeline. We can rotate those arrows. We can change the nature of those arrows in the properties area. We can even change the thickness of the line. So once again, all of the annotations give us things that we can actually place in the video wherever we want. Now, one of the things you're going to notice about this particular annotation is that Camtasia put it on top of the other ones. So if we were to raise our cursor on the right side, we can see that this is now on track 5. As we said, it's a good practice to rename the tracks so that you know what's there. We have even more options within each one of the annotations in the style area. For example, we can make something bold, or we can make an element what's called urban. Again, we'd be dragging a new element there, or abstract. In the third panel, we have shapes. And in some cases, what we might do is we might pull the cursor forward and we might add the shape into the presentation at a different point. And so if that's the case, we're just going to drag this element right into our video. We can size this element up. Or size it back down. We have a fourth panel. Now the fourth panel is very important, and there are some elements there that we want to take a few minutes to actually talk about for a minute. Now you're going to notice that first there is a blur element. And the blur element is going to help us if we have personal information that we need to display on our screen. We can actually blur that information out. And one of the ways that we do that is we can then drag this element onto the screen. And you'll notice then that the element becomes blurrier. What's on the screen is going to be blurry to the audience. And we can make that appear as long as we need it to. You'll notice I'm pulling out the timeline. When you are doing screen sharing video and you do not want to show personal information, you will be using the blur key very often. Now, there are some similar keys that we can actually use. We can actually spotlight something. So in this particular case, we can actually bring our cursor and spotlight an element. We're going to take the spotlight out. We can highlight something. Once again, remember, we can alter all of these elements when we click inside of the element and we go to the properties area. We can pixelate something, which works very similar to the blur, but has a different effect. And once again, we can change this in the properties area. And we can lengthen or shorten it on the timeline. Also in the annotations area, we have the sketch motion callouts. Now also in the annotations area, we have the sketch motion callouts. And sketch motion callouts are very handy to use when you want to highlight something and you want to draw your user's attention. And you can do that by dragging in a sketch annotation. In this particular case, we're going to drag in a loop circle. We're going to have it cover all of this information. So what we want to do is we want to take a look to see how the animation is going to look. We want it to cover the entire section. And with a sketch animation in Camtasia, this is actually going to do motion drawing. And we're going to be able to see this right on our screen. And once again, we can control this element in our properties area. We want to change the color. If we want to change the thickness. And if we even want to change the amount of time that it's going to take to draw the element. We can actually flip the element vertically or horizontally. So again, always remember that when you drag an element in, you can always make changes to how it's actually going to appear by working with the properties. Because this is a special element, one thing we can do is we can see how it's actually going to appear in the timeline in our actual video. So let's do that. All we have to do is pull it to that point in the timeline. Then we're going to press play. And you'll notice that Camtasia actually draws on our video. So sketch motion is very handy. And once again, you can have it to appear as long as you like, but you'll still want to control the time that it takes to draw the element in this area. Now, one additional element in the annotations area are going to be what are called keystroke callouts. Now, keystroke callouts are very effective in sharing with your viewer what they need to do in order to replicate your effects that you are doing on your screen. So, for example, let's say that you are clicking Control S for save and you're doing it at this point in the video. So what would you do? Well, we'd shorten it to just talk about the period of time where the person is going to be talking about Control S. And then we would change this. So you'll see now in the properties area, just as we've seen everything else, we're going to make this Control plus S. And we're going to head to the properties area and we're going to make this Control S to indicate save. So we're going to place our keys in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the motion on our keyboards. We're not going to type in Control S. We're going to hit the Control then S button. And that will appear in this block. And then we'll drag it to the place that we want it to be. Now, let's say that there's a different point in the timeline that you wanted to indicate that your viewer needed to paste something. So we drag the keystone callout either into the timeline or into the video itself. We would time it. And then we would go to the keys and we would click Control V, indicating paste. And so now what we have is another way of being able to get our viewer to understand exactly what they need to do to get the results that we are teaching them. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to work with the transitions element. And on the left-hand side menu, you'll want to go to the transitions. And transitions are a way for you to be able to go from one part of your video to another and give your viewer something to focus on other than a hard edit. So, for example, if we were to go to a place where there was a break and we wanted to start talking about something different, what we need to do in order to implement a transition is that we would need to go to the timeline, highlight all of the elements, and then we need to hit the split command. Once we have the split command, we can then use the transitions in order to give our viewer something else to focus on. So, for example, we can choose any of the transitions that you'll see here on the left-hand side panel. They are also divided into certain sections. So if you want to have a fade, if you want to have movement, if you want to have objects, if you want to have a stylized one, or even if you want to have one that wipes. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually drag this transition down to the timeline. And what you're going to notice is that it is going to land the actual video track. Now let's see what the transition is actually going to look like. So we'll back the cursor up and then we'll hit the play button. And if we look in this area, if we look here, the editor will show us what our transition is going to do. So as you can see, what transitions do is they give us a break so that if you have two ideas and you're trying to share them differently, it's a great way of being able to display to your viewer that something has changed. Now, you can do the same thing with a different kind of object. So all we would need to do if we wanted to delete this transition, right-click it, and then click delete. And then we would drag this transition down to the timeline. So once again, we're going to back this cursor before the transition. And you can see how it's actually going to look with your content. So once again, you are going to go to the timeline where you want the transition to be situated. And let's say that we want it to be situated someplace between these two slides. Now, one thing that you can do to get your transition exactly right is you can actually stretch the timeline. So for example, what we want to do is we want to get it as close to being between these two slides as we can. And we can do that by stretching out the timeline, hitting the plus button. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the exact point where the slide changes. And once we've found the space on the timeline that we want to actually have our transition appear, we're going to find the place, and then we're going to hit the split command. That's going to split the video track. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag this transition right down on top of that video track. We're actually going to then take a look to see how it's actually going to look. And what you'll notice is that the process that we just went through actually changes when the slide changes. And we accomplish that by stretching out the timeline and getting the cursor exactly at the point where the slide transitions. And this is a great way of being able to give your viewer an element of variety while they're watching a tutorial. But you can do this with any element that you're actually going to be using. Even if you're using a talking head video, you can do the very same thing. Now, of course, like every other element, if we place our cursor on top of the transition, it actually has its own properties. and we can actually change it in the properties area. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to be discussing the Behaviors tab, and you'll notice that Camtasia will give you the opportunity to cause your entire video to behave in certain ways. And it's an interesting feature to use, but where it's especially used is when you are having an opening sequence. But for the sake of example, let's take a look to see what these behaviors actually do. When we pick a place on the timeline, and let's move the cursor all the way back to the beginning, what we can do is we can drag the behavior that we're looking for, and we can test all of these. And we can test all of them by hovering over them to see what they're going to look like. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to drag one of the behaviors onto the canvas. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to click the play button so that we can see what our screen is actually going to do and what the viewer is going to see. As you'll notice, this element has properties. So we can control what happens at the beginning, we can control what happens during the middle, and control what happens during the end. And we can set different aspects of the behavior of our screen. So once again, we're going to go back here to the beginning. And instead of the drifting timeline, we're going to use the fade behavior and drag that into our box. So we're going to take a look at what this is going to actually look like. So you'll see the fade in and fade out. So let's take a look again. Once again, we can control this using the properties and take a look to see what's actually going to happen. This sample presentation, we'll start with the slide presentation from the beginning. So as you can tell, what the behaviors do is they give us a different element for us to be able to give our viewer some variety in seeing our video. Now, the key to understanding how to use these behaviors is to monitor how they look on the timeline, is to use the properties button. If you don't want one there, you can just X out of it. And then to drag them from the behavior section into the canvas. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to be talking about the animations element. And you'll notice that the animations element in the left side panel has two sides, zoom and pan, and animations. So first, let's talk about zoom and pan. Now, what you'll notice is that there are going to be times when you might actually want to zoom in and have your viewer see something that might be too small for them to see just by watching the video. And you can actually do that by doing zoom and pan, and I'll show you what that means. Now, when you do zoom and pan, what you'll want to do is you'll want to take this square by the handles, and you'll want to move it to the place that you actually want to zoom in on. What you'll notice that's happening in the timeline is that there will be an arrow, and that is your zoom and pan arrow, and it's an indication that you have placed an element on the timeline where you were zooming and panning. And what's happening on the screen is that we have zoomed in on this one area, as you can see. Now, just like any other element, we can actually control that element by clicking on the element and by using the properties area. So what could happen is that your video would progress, and then you'd want to go back to the regular size. You'd want to have your video show the entire screen. You can do that by going to Scale to Fit just by clicking this button. And you'll notice then that your screen will show the full size. And this can be a handy tool when you have to record a part of the video that will be too small for your viewers to see. And what you'll notice is that we have two arrows on the timeline. Both arrows indicate zoom and pan. One indicates that we zoomed in, the other one indicates that we zoomed out. Now you can also use the animations feature, and there are 10 to speak of, and we'll briefly go through each one of them. Now to do that, we're going to advance the video slightly by moving the cursor. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually pull each one onto the timeline so that you can see what actually happens. So in the custom area, we can pull our zoom and pan here. And what happens is we can actually customize what actually happens, and we control that inside of the properties area. If we don't want the animation, we click it and click delete. We can actually use the restore. And you'll notice what happens is it actually restores the screen to where it was. So in other words, it looks backwards, it skips the last animation, and it brings the screen back to where it was for this animation. And you can see that here. Once again, we can control this in the properties area. So now we're going to click delete. We can bring in an animation that has no opacity, right, or no see-through nature. Or we can bring in one that has full opacity. We can bring in the element that says tilt to the left. And as you'll notice, our screen tilts to the left. We can control how much in the properties area. And we can do the same thing tilting to the right. We can actually have an animation that will scale up. And then one that will scale down. The last animation that we'll be talking about can be done on any point in the timeline or any section of the timeline. So we could choose a section of the timeline, and we could place here. And what we want to do is we want to use the smart focus. And so what we're going to do is we're going to drag the smart focus into one area. And what you're going to notice is that Camtasia Studio will tell us that to apply smart focus animations, the editing dimensions need to be smaller than the media that we're using. So right now we're using full screen, we're using full size. So as long as the dimensions are smaller, we'll be able to use zoom and pan, which it will be. And so we can choose our settings to make sure it is smaller. We can use fit to visible, or we can customize it. We can customize it for any device. So in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're going to customize it for 480p and click apply. Since you'll be using this feature often, we'll be taking a closer look at the smart focus element all by itself in a future video. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Okay, so what we're going to do is record a sample video so that we can put it on the timeline so that we can show you the rest of the features that are part of the elements on the left side panel. So we're going to click this record button, and then we're going to record some clicks, some other things on this Snagit page, and then we're going to bundle up this video, and then we're going to allow it to be placed on the timeline. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to click the File And we're going to click Import Profiles. And then we're going to dismiss that one. And we're going to click the Capture menu. And we're going to click the View menu. And then the Tools menu. And the Help menu. And then we are going to take a look at these three elements on the screen. And then we're going to take a look at one of these elements. And this will give us enough to take a look at what we're doing. Okay, so we're looking at this element. And we're going to click Yes. And now we have enough to go to the timeline. So we're just going to click the Stop button. So we click the Stop button. You'll notice our video populates this area. You'll see the sound coming in. And so now we have a video to work with that we can then show you cursor effects, voice narrations, audio effects, visual effects, and interactivity. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. So now that we have a screen sharing video on our timeline, we can now take a look at some other elements that we have on the left side panel. And in particular, we're going to take a look at the cursor effects. Now, the cursor effects, if you click on that panel, you'll notice that there are three sections. And in the first section, where the arrow is, or the cursor icon, you'll notice that you can actually put a cursor highlight into your video, and that will be so that your cursor, wherever it goes, you'll have a highlight following it, just like you see there. You can also have the cursor to magnify an area, in other words, to enlarge an area wherever it goes. You can have a cursor to spotlight an area or to show it by darkening the sides around it. Now, some of the other effects inside of the cursor effects, you'll notice there is a left click element. So that every time that you left click an area of your video, you'll have a certain effect. One would be rings. Another would be a ripple, as you can see here. Another would be a scope. And another would be a target. And then there's also the wrap. Now, one of the unique things about left clicking is that you can actually also place something in the sound area. So in other words, so that every time you left click something on your video, you can actually have it so that there will be a click to sound in the video. And you place that on the timeline just like you would anything else. You can also, with your right click, do the same thing. You can do rings, you can do ripple, you can do scope, you can target, you can do a wrap, and you can also have a right click sound. So let's go back to the first panel. And now that we have a screen sharing video inside of our timeline, let's start with the cursor highlight. I'm going to start on the beginning of the timeline. I'm just going to drag this cursor highlight to that area. You'll notice that now for the duration of the video, every place your cursor goes, there's going to be a yellow highlight to follow it. Right? You can actually adjust that in the properties area. So let's undo this by using the undo command. And then let's take a look at the magnify button. And we're just going to drag that down into the timeline. And so the cursor actually magnifies things. So we will see that when you have something and it's small, that the cursor will actually show it to be larger. Okay, so we're going to drag the cursor back, and then we're going to undo this. And now we're going to do a spotlight. And you'll notice now that the cursor actually spotlights an area by making the rest around it dark. Okay, so we're going to undo this. We can also do left and right mouse click effects. We can drag this, and actually we can drag in the click effect, and you'll see it. So you'll notice there. So what you're actually seeing is you're seeing you can add things to your video. And by adding those things, what you're doing is you are really highlighting what's really happening, and you're giving your viewer the opportunity to really be able to visualize and really become part of the video. This can be important when you're creating a tutorial video. Remember, you can also emulate sound with a click. And you'll hear this in the sample video when you actually play the video once it's actually rendered and ready. So what we're going to do now is we are going to render this video, and we are going to title it so that you will have it as part of your example files so that you'll know what you're actually looking at. You're looking at something where you'll know what effects that you can expect. You can expect to see a cursor highlight, which we're going to put back here. You can expect to see a left click effect. You can even expect to see a right click. We're going to also implement sound. And we're going to implement sound also. So what we're going to do to get this video ready, and we will go over this one element once we are actually in the editing stage of this course. We notice that the video has a low audio. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the audio portion of this timeline. And what we're going to do is we're going to raise the audio. And we're going to do that by going over to the properties area, and we're going to adjust the volume. And you'll see that the volume is rising. We can always go back and we can change the audio and re-render the video. But for now, we're going to raise the volume so that that volume will be higher when that video is made. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through the process of making the video. Now, because we're going to go through this process with you in another video, we're going to do this off camera, but you will have this video as part of your files. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now, in this video, we're going to be discussing voice narration. And there will be times when you have recorded a video or you're going to want to edit a video and you don't like the audio that is associated with it. Now, in this particular case, you'll notice that there is audio that goes along with the video. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to record new audio for this video. And one of the best ways to do this inside of Camtasia is to narrate the audio while the video is playing. And so one of the ways in which you do that is you can actually delete the audio. And when you do that, you want to actually save your project as a new file because you don't want to have your audio missing from the file that you already have. So once you've deleted that audio, go ahead and resave the file as something new. And you'll simply go from File to Save As, and then you'll rename the file. Okay, Camtasia will give you the message that your file is saved. You can click OK. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use the voice narration, and we're going to walk through doing a new video, but yet we're going to be recording audio that will fall on our timeline. And we're going to do that while we watch this video. So to do that, you go to the voice narration area. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start voice recording. Now, before you do that, you're going to want to make sure that you're using the microphone that you want to talk into. We're going to use this one. Now, if you have a script, you want to copy and paste that script into this area. And then you're simply going to start recording. Now, here's what's going to happen when you start recording. You are actually going to have the cursor advance. So you'll be watching the video and you'll be describing the video as it's actually progressing. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can actually mute the timeline during recording. So if there's any sound in the background, you don't want it to be on that audio. And so the way you do that is you're going to click this mute button, and then we're going to start recording. Okay, so we're going to now stop this audio. And now this audio is going to come onto our timeline, but it's also going to record the audio and place it into MP4 to an MP4 sound file. Okay, so we're going to click this and click save. And what you're going to see is that this narration now comes onto our timeline. And now we can edit a new video with new audio. And this is one of the primary functions of voice narration. It allows us to redo or to add in audio in certain places in a video where we can actually watch what's happening in the video so that we can describe it properly. So if we have to edit something out, someone didn't do something properly, we can do that in the editing process by going to voice narration and simply editing over that piece and cutting it out. And you'll understand more about that when we get to the editing process, but you do now understand how to start the voice recording process. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to be talking about the audio effects element on the left side panel. Now you'll notice when you click the audio effects element, you're going to find 5 different aspects of being able to edit your audio. Now this is only going to be relevant during the editing phase of your audio because you're going to be pulling these effects into your timeline. Now the first is called noise removal. Now with noise removal, what it does is it allows you to take out any consistent background noise that you have in your recording. And Camtasia actually automates this process. And what you'll do is you'll take the noise removal element, pull it down into the audio. When you do that, you're going to notice that it has properties. In that properties area, what you're going to do is click Analyze. That's going to generate an audio noise profile. And then, in effect, what you'll see is you'll notice that there's a gray bar underneath here. That means then that the audio, that the noise removal is now in effect. Now, another thing that you can do in Camtasia is that you can level out the audio. Let's say that you have 2 different portions of your audio, or you pause the audio and then you record it, and you just happen to speak louder in the second one than you did the first one. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to actually pull this volume leveling element into the timeline. And what you'll notice is that Camtasia does is it starts to level off the audio. It brings up the audio that's too low, and it brings down the audio that's too high. Of course, you can balance this inside of the properties area. Another great feature that Camtasia will do with your audio is that you can actually fade out your audio. So for example, you can pull the fade out audio, and what you'll notice is that this audio point actually starts to tail off the audio here at the end, so it will actually fade out. You can do the same thing in terms of fading in. And you'll notice that it fades in. Now, let's say that you wanted to start this earlier. You can bring this back earlier. If you want to do it later, you could bring it back. You can also change the clip speed. And this can be handy in case that you have a situation where you may have recorded audio and you may need to squeeze it into a tighter video frame than you originally planned. Well, what you can do is you can actually bring the audio into a clip. And what you can do is you can actually speed up your audio or slow down the audio. So for example, you'll see that the audio is about 1 minute and 20 seconds long. Let's say they really needed to be 1 minute and 30 seconds long. We could actually put that in there, and you'll see that the audio lengthens. You can actually do the opposite, and you can say, well, we really want the audio to be 1 minute and 10 seconds. And the audio slows down. And Camtasia will do this over the course of a portion of a piece of an audio or the entire audio that you have on the clip. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to be discussing the visual effects element. And when you click the visual effects element, you're going to see 7 different effects that you can actually use inside of your video. Now the first that you'll see here is called the drop shadow. And we'll need to put a call out or annotation here to show you what a drop shadow actually does. So let's go and get an annotation. And then we will drop it into the timeline on track 3. And all we have to do is drag it over, and you'll notice then it appears in track 3. Now we can determine how long it'll appear in the video, but it is now on track 3. So now let's go back to the visual effects. So what we would do to get a drop shadow, what we're accomplishing here is for the shadow to mirror the shape of the object. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag the drop shadow onto track number 3. And you'll notice here that there is a drop shadow properties area. So what can we do with this? Well, we can start working with the properties so that we actually show a drop shadow. So we can offset, and you'll notice there that there is more of the drop shadow that'll show. We can show more of it or less of it, make it darker or lighter. We can blur it. We can have the video ease into it on a timing level or ease out of it on a timing level. And this is what a drop shadow does. So now let's take a look at the border feature. In order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to make the drop shadow invisible. And to do that, we're just going to head to this track 3 button, and we're going to click disable track. What that does is, even though we have the call out here on the track, it is now invisible, so it does no longer show. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull in an image onto the canvas. So we're going to go to the image area, and we're just going to drag this image onto the canvas. And that's going to appear on track 4. We're going to make this a little smaller. And remember, we can extend this and have this appear as long as we need to. And this could just as well be a video clip. We're just choosing to use an image. What we're going to do now is going to go back to the visual effects. And we're going to pull in the border to the timeline. And what you'll notice now is that there is a properties area. So we're going to make this border a certain color. Going to make it purple. And then we're going to increase the thickness of the border. And then you'll see it start to appear. So we can do this with different elements that we're causing to appear inside of our video. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to make this track invisible. And we're going to move on to the colorize element. And all we do with colorize is we can pull that colorize element onto any track. So we're going to pull it onto the main track, and you can see that there's an effect right away. We can choose the color. We can choose the amount of the color that we want to have colorized. Okay, so we're going to get rid of this effect. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to put in a color adjustment element. We're going to bring that down to track 1, which is our main video track, and you'll see right away that some of the color has gone away. And we can actually adjust the track until it appears to be the colors that we want to show. Okay, and once again, you can have this appear in as long as the video as you actually would like it to appear. For example, if you only wanted it to appear in a certain part of the track, you could do that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get rid of the color adjustment. And now we're going to take a look at the remove a color element. And to do that, we're going to go back to our media bin. We're going to drag in another element to the timeline. So we're just going to click add to the timeline at the playhead. So it's going to add this to track 5. And again, we can extend this and as long through the video as we can, so it can be either one. So what are we going to do in order to remove a color? This is especially helpful if you have green screen videos. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the visual effects and we're going to drag in remove a color. And what you're going to notice is that there is a properties area. And so what we're going to do is we're going to now go to the color area and we're going to grab this image. And what we're going to do is we're going to find the color that we actually want to take out. Okay, so we're going to do this one. And you'll notice that most of the background is going to go away, and then we can work with more of this until we have as much away as we'd like. So again, this can be especially helpful if you have a green screen video and you already have your background in green. If you have good lighting and you have done your green screen video well, this will be very easy to do. So just like we did with the audio, one of the really cool things about Camtasia is that we can actually speed up the clip and we can speed up the video so that we can drag the clip speed down to the video area. So let's take a look at the clip speed area. And you'll notice here that the video goes for 1 minute and 30 seconds. But let's say we wanted to go for 1 minute and 50 seconds. We can do that. And you'll see that the timeline lengthens. If we want to do it for 1 minute and 25 seconds, slightly shorter, we can do that. Okay, so the last element is the interactive hotspot. So let's take a look at how this will actually work for us. So what we can do with the interactive hotspot is we can do a stop motion video. So in other words, we can cause the video to pause until the user has actually done something. Now to actually use an interactive hotspot, what we're going to have to do is go to the Annotations element. We're going to click the interactive hotspot, and then we're going to click Add Timeline to a Playhead. And what's going to happen is that when the video reaches this point, it's going to give your viewers the opportunity to click this area, and then it's going to do one of a couple of actions. We can actually have it sent to a website. That could be helpful in many cases. We could have it sent to a certain marker. So where if we had marked the timeline for a certain chapter, we could have it marked for a certain time, and then we can actually have it sent to a certain time in the video when the person clicks. Or we can just say click to continue. Now in order to execute this, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to give the viewer some instructions. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the callouts. Then we're going to add in some text. And we're going to just add it in right here. We're going to double click it. And what we're going to do is we're going to say something like click to continue. And we want it to appear for the same length of time as the hotspot. And then let's go to the hotspot so we can start to work with the image. So we're going to close this in some. We're going to go back now to the interactive portion. So we have it pausing to at the end and asking the viewer to click to continue. Now in order to produce the actual video, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to produce a certain kind of video. And so in order to do that, you're going to produce a custom production. And we're going to take a look at the new custom production here. And you're going to need to produce a smart player. That's going to give you all of the files in order to help you to make the interactive hotspot actually work. So you're going to go to Next. And then you are actually going to go Next. and then you're going to just click next. And you're going to have all of these files that you're going to need to upload, but all of those files are going to be necessary in order for you to be able to produce that interactive hotspot on your actual video. And that is the last visual effect that we will be working with. And with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to be using the quizzing feature, and we're actually going to use it in order to produce a survey. So we're going to bring the markers track, and we're going to make sure that the quiz is selected, not the marker. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come into this track, and we're going to add in a survey at the end of our video. Now what we're going to do is we're going to name this, we're going to rename this as our survey. And you'll notice that it renames as a survey here. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to populate our survey. And we're going to start by going to the question mark at the very top here. And then we're going to enter our first question. And when we write that question, we're going to decide on how we're going to do it. And we're going to write in our question. Okay, so we now have our question in. And now what we're going to do is going to write in the answers. One thing we want to do at the beginning of the quiz is we want to make sure that the viewers do not see their results, but at the same time that we do score the quiz. So now that we've seen that, we want to go back to the question area. And what we want to do now is we want to display feedback. Now, if they get the correct answer, which is today, we want to give them a message. Right? So we've said click to get 25% off instantly today. And so we're going to go to a URL if they get that right. And so we're going to put that URL in there. Now, if they don't choose the answer that we want to send them someplace else. So we're going to give them a different message. So we've said click here to get more information on how it works. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to URL. We're going to give a different URL now. Now, you want to make sure that they've got some reason to want to continue the quiz all the way through. So you're going to stop at the end of the content, but before the video ends, and you're going to give them some reason to continue. You want to give them some instructions that they'll get their prize or whatever they're going to get if they take a 5-minute survey. And then you want to give them some instructions at this point. Okay, so we've got a little message there saying, okay, take the quiz, take our 5-minute survey, and then we'll get your prize ready. So they know they've got to continue, and then they'll get whatever you promised them before they finish the video. So now what we're going to do is we're going to need to produce the video. And like the video that we needed to produce for the interactive hotspot, we'll need to produce a certain kind of video. We're going to do a custom production. We're going to do another new custom production. And once again, we're going to need to create a smart player with this video. Now this video will have some interactivity in it, and the quiz will be that interactivity. So now, what's important before we end this video is to walk you through steps you're going to need to take in order to customize your quiz. So you're going to click Next here, and you'll have your controller there. You can decide on the size and the video settings and the audio settings. Now, what's going to be important is that you have quizzing ticked, and then you're going to click Next. What you're going to do now is you're going to click Next, and you're going to be given an opportunity to make sure that your users can take the quiz anonymously, or you can require them to input their name and email address. But before you do that, you're going to want to make sure that the quiz appears the way you want it to. And so you're going to want to make sure that what shows up is going to be take a 5-minute survey. We're going to get rid of the View Answers button. We want the Continue button, the Previous button, the Next button, and then the Submit Answers button. we're actually not going to allow replay the last section. So we're going to click OK. So now our quiz is going to be ready, and we're going to click Next. So now we'll need to produce the video in order to have the files that we need in order to do the quiz. So let's go ahead and produce the video off camera, and then we'll take a look at the quiz. And we're now going to click the Finish button. So when our video is installed and it plays, you'll notice that it's going to say, now take a 5-minute survey. And then we're going to have that question that we wrote. We're going to say today. And we're going to submit our answer. And then it says click to get 25% off instantly today. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to continue. And it's going to go to Google the way we want it. So quizzing and surveying can be an excellent way of being able to direct people where you want them to be based on the information that you give them in your video. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to take a look at the captions element. You're going to notice that when you open the captions element, you can either import a captions file into this area, and that would be a file where you've already transcribed your entire video, and you're going to upload it so that the words will appear as they're spoken in the video. Camtasia will help you to do that. Now, what you can also do, and tends to be more accurate, is for you to be able to add your own captions. And you can actually extend this through the entire video. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be typing as the video progresses. So, for example, what we would do is we would play the video, or start by playing the video, and then begin to write in the caption. So what's going to happen is you'll notice that our captions file will appear in the actual video. And they will appear in the video as the words are spoken. And Camtasia will do this automatically based on the file we either create or that we upload. So you can do it either way. But what you're doing is you're providing captions that are going to appear inside of the video. Now you can actually render the video in two different ways. You can actually render the video by disabling this track. And then you can actually render it again by enabling the track. So you can actually render two different kinds of videos so that you will have captions in one while you wouldn't have captions in the other one. Now when you click inside of the captions area, what you can do is you can actually change some of the text properties, the font, the size of the font, and even the opacity. You can choose the alignment. And you can actually choose the color. So you have lots of options in how you determine how your captions are actually going to be seen in your video. And that is all for our captions video. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to start looking at the top line menu. I'm going to go through different points so that you understand what each of these things does. In most cases, most of what you're going to be doing is going to be in the left-hand side menu as well as on the timeline. And what you're going to find is that many of these features are also going to be found in the top line menu. However, there are certain aspects of the program that you are going to want to be aware of. So let's first go to the File menu. You're going to notice the very first link is for a new project. So if you are, so it's going to be instructive right here to talk about the difference between projects and recording files. You're going to see files, and most of them are going to be red, and you're going to notice that they're called TechSmith recordings. The files in Camtasia 9, when you complete a recording, will be saved into a file name called TREC, which is called TechSmith recording. That's the same thing that you actually have on your timeline. And you'll notice that you have the trec file right here in your media bin. These files are all recording files. They can all be pulled into the timeline and they can all be edited into a specific project. So that even though this trec or this recording file does not change, we can edit it in a number of different ways, and we can save that recording into a project in as many ways as we want to do an edit. So in order to create a project, we've already done our edits, and so we would go to the File menu and we would save this as a particular project and give that project a name. What we can do then is we can go to get the File menu, we can get a new project, and what you'll notice is that the entire timeline goes away. So in other words, that project is now saved, we no longer need it, and we can now pull a new recording file into this particular timeline. Now, one thing that's important to note, when you are recording a video, you will typically want to have your new project on your timeline. And the reason is because when you actually finish your new recording, that recording is going to automatically populate, as we've seen in previous videos, into this timeline. If you don't, what will happen is it will actually add on to a project that's already open. So you want to make sure that you have a new project ready to go when you actually start recording. New project also means that we can actually pull other media into our media bin and we can start working with it into the timeline. We can import media, which we will go over in another video, and we can start working with that video and dragging it onto the timeline. So a new project basically means that this is a way for us to edit a recording file or to create some new media based on everything else that we already have. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now in this video, we are going to open an existing project. And to do that, all we're going to do is go to the File menu. You're going to notice that you have a control key you could use. So you could just use Control and letter O. But if you didn't, what you do is you just click this link that says Open Project. And it's going to go and look to your hard drive to try to find some existing Camtasia projects. Now, take note of a couple of things. Number one, you'll notice that a Camtasia project for Camtasia 9 is listed as TSC PROJ. The old standard for Camtasia is CAM PROJ. Now, if you open the old standard, what's going to happen is you are going to get the opportunity to open it into Camtasia 9, but you will not be able to reopen it in the older version. So first, let's go ahead and open this project in Camtasia 9 that is really an older version project. So we're going to click Open. And we do that, we get this message that this project was created in an earlier version of Camtasia Studio, and the project file has to be converted before it can be opened in the current version. And Camtasia will do all of this automatically. When you say yes, just note that you are basically saying that you are not going to reopen this project in the older version. So we're going to click Yes. Now Camtasia will tell you that the project upgrade was successful, and then you click OK so that the upgraded project will now open. And then you'll notice then that it now has the new file extension, TSC PROJ. And now Camtasia will continue to open the project. Now what happens automatically is that the Camtasia file will open all of the old project files. So everything you had in the media bin is now in the media bin for the new project. So it'll go and get either recording files or anything else you were using as media. We'll also have all of the edits for the older project. And so now all you need to do is you would go and need to produce this video or do any other additional edits that you want to do. However, what we're going to do is we're going to go and find an existing project. And so we're going to close out this project. I'm going to do that by going to File. And then we're actually going to save this new project. Once we've saved, all we need to do in order to clear this timeline is to go and look for a new project. And as you know, Camtasia will then clear the entire timeline, as you can see. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go and open an existing project. And we're going to get one of these projects that are actually TSC PROJ. And Camtasia will now open that project. Okay, so as you can see, it opens with a TREC file, which is a recording file, an audio file, and any edits that have already been done. Now, in order to clear the timeline without making any changes, all we would need to do is to go to File, click New Project. Now, Camtasia will ask us to save any changes to the current project. Because we haven't made any, we don't have to save any. So we're just going to click No. And then the timeline clears again. Now what we can also do is we can find projects that we've recently saved by going to this link. Camtasia will give you a list. We can save the current project as you've seen. You can save the current project as something new, and this can be a handy way of being able to save individual edits that you have done that you like to save in a different place than you have saved than the main project you're working on. The last thing we're going to look at right now are the project settings. We're going to click this link. Now basically what this feature does is it allows us the control over the canvas at the size at which we want to operate. So currently you'll notice that the canvas dimensions are 1920 by 1080. So what you're seeing on your screen from here to here and from this angle to that angle is going to be 1920 wide by 1080 tall. And so you basically have this square that you're working in, but this, the project settings, tells you the size when you open it. And we can change that if we want to. We can change that to a lower version of high definition. We can change it to standard definition. We can make it specific for the iPhone 5 or the iPhone 6. Or we can customize it. So anything that we want to do to make specific videos, we can actually do it, but we want to start the process by making sure that our canvas is open at the very beginning of the project to where we actually want it to be. Now, this doesn't necessarily control how you record. What it does is it controls the editing and the workspace that you will be operating in as you do your project editing. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now, in this video, we're going to go back to the File menu, and we're going to take a look at a few more elements that you'll see in your File menu. Now, if we go to the New Recording link, what that's going to do is that's going to bring up the recording bar that we have been seeing in some other videos. And you'll see that toolbar right here. Of course, remember, you'll be clicking the record button in order to get started with your recording. If we go back to the File menu and we go to the Import link, you'll notice that we can import media. We can import recent recordings, and these are recordings that we have actually done in Camtasia. And typically Camtasia will go to the directory where we last saved the recording, and it will hold at least 8. So we can get any of the last 8 recordings that we have done and import them into a current project. We can import captions. We've actually seen captions in the previous video, and what we will be doing is we'll be looking for a specific kind of text file. And Camtasia will actually show you what those file formats are in this area. Now for this video, we're actually going to skip connect mobile device, because we're going to talk about that in a separate video, you'll actually see a command for the library. Now, the library is where we actually saw the assets that we use in order to enhance our recording, if you recall. So going back to this, what we can do is we can actually import media to that library. So in other words, we can add media to our library if we are going to be using a certain kind of media in all of our video. Let's say that there's a music that is our brand music. Let's say there's a logo that's our brand logo. And what we want to do is we want to have it as part of our library every place that we use Camtasia. And so what we would do is we would import that media to the library, and we would do that by clicking this link. Camtasia then goes to look for something on our hard drive that we can actually place in the library. Now in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're just going to place a sound file there. So we're going to click on that sound file, and we're going to click open. And what you'll notice now is that that file is now in the music tracks for all of our libraries. So this means then that anytime we open up Camtasia, we can actually use this file in any of our recordings. So let's go back to our library menu. And what you're going to notice is that you can actually create a new folder in that library. So what we could do is we could create a new folder, and we could call that folder something that we are commonly going to have in our videos. Notice I created a new file called interview snippets. So now anything that I have that's an interview snippet, I would want it to be inside of this folder. And so in this particular case, I might take this interview and slide it up into the folder. So now it's part of this part of my library. You're going to notice two additional commands: export library and import library. So what we could do is we could import an entire library that's in a zip file and bring it into our current library and actually add it. Now, one of the things that you might wonder is, well, why would I ever import another library? Well, there are a couple of reasons that you might do this. If you have what's called a production machine, in other words, you are rendering videos on another PC where you have Camtasia installed, if you're using a library item that you have imported but has not been imported to the new software, well, you'd want to have that new library on your second PC where you're rendering videos. And so what you'd want to do in that case is you'd want to import a zipped library that was actually exported from your primary PC. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to explore the export library command. And we're going to do that by going to the library, and we're going to highlight all of the items there. We're going to go back to the file menu. We're going to go back to the library, and then we're going to export selected assets. And then this is going to have a certain file name. You'll notice that it looks like a zip file, but it's going to look slightly different, and it's going to be specific to Camtasia. So what we're going to do is we're going to click OK, and this entire library is now going to be zipped. And what can happen now is that this library, once zipped, can be imported into another installation of Camtasia. And you'll see that it's zipping up all the library items in here now. Okay, so now that we're complete, this library has been zipped, and it can now be imported into another installation of Camtasia as long as it is ours and it is licensed by us. What you'll also notice is that we can get additional media online. So we can click this link and we'll be taken to the TechSmith website. So Camtasia gives users animated backgrounds, icons they can use, motion graphics, music, and there are also assets from other software partners that you can actually download for Camtasia also. So if you wanted to download this background, what you need to do is to sign into your Camtasia account. And once you're signed in, you just click the download button. Once the file has been downloaded, we can now import it into Camtasia. Once we've downloaded this information, what we can do is we can now pull this into Camtasia into our media bin. And to do that, we're going to click the Import Media. And then we're just going to go and get the actual video. And we're going to grab this file and click Open. That's going to bring the file into our media bin. And then what we're going to do is we're going to right-click this. I'm going to click Add to Library. And now this has now been added to our library. Of course, then we'll want to categorize it into the right folder, but that is how you would grab the content that you get online, bring it into Camtasia, and get it into your library. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to take a look at the File menu, and we're going to take a look at the Connect Mobile Device command. So what we're going to do is we're going to click this link. That's going to open up a dialog box. And you're going to notice some instructions from TechSmith. TechSmith suggests that you install TechSmith Fuse, which is a free app that you can install from the Google Play Store, from the App Store, or from the Windows Store. So depending on what kind of mobile device you have, you will want to install that application. Then you'll want to make sure that your PC and your mobile device are connected to the very same network. So if you're connected using your mobile device through your Wi-Fi network, you can then use this feature. Now there are a couple of steps that you are going to want to take. You're going to want to start the process by opening TechSmith's Fuse on your mobile device. Then you're going to take an image or a video and you're going to send it in real time to Camtasia. So to show you how this process works, we're going to shoot an image of a book, and then what we're going to do is we're going to then transport that image in real time. Now what you were unable to see on screen was that we were asked to scan this image using our mobile device, and then that gave us access to Camtasia through our network. And then when we clicked the share button in our mobile device, this image, which is the book that we talked about, is now in our media bin to be worked with. We can do the same thing with a video clip on our mobile device as long as we are connected to the same network, and as long as we then give our mobile device access to our Camtasia, we can then put those images inside of our media bin to be worked with inside of Camtasia. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to go over the File menu. We're going to take a look at the Import and Export commands. You're going to notice that there are 3 commands having to do with importing and exporting. Export is zip, export for the Mac, import zipped project. Now, the export as a zip file basically is exactly as you might imagine it. It'll take the entire project on the timeline, and you'll be able to zip this project up and then pass it on to either someone else or onto another drive to be used on another PC that you have Camtasia installed with your license. So what you'll do is you'll just go to this link and you'll click Export as Zipped. Camtasia will ask you for a zip file name. You'll want to give it one that is unique. Now what you can do is you can include all of the files in the media bin. We're going to do that. And now we're just going to click OK. And once that process is complete, you are now ready to have that file being used any place else where Camtasia 9 is installed. Now, there is another feature that you can use, and it is called Import Zipped Project. And so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to close this entire project without saving it. And then what we're going to do is go to the File area, and then we're going to import a zipped project. And we're going to go and get the exact project that we just zipped. Now, you would obviously not be doing this in this case, but if you had a zipped project, it was a Camtasia project, you can actually pick up that zip project and add it to your current project just as if you were using it in Camtasia 9. So Camtasia is going to ask you for the file. We're going to click Browse. We're going to pick up Unique Project. And then we're going to actually import this. We're going to go ahead and import this into a different directory. Now, the only reason that we did that is because it's the same folder that we actually saved our project. You would not have that situation if you were using a zipped project that you were picking up. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just going to click OK. And then you'll see the project loading. And you'll notice now that our images are back, which means then that this is the file that we used and we zipped up before. So what you've seen now is how you can import and export zip files, the entire project file, to be used in another version of Camtasia. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to be going over the File menu and the Batch Production. Now, the Batch Production command, what happens is that you are able to render or produce multiple files or multiple videos at the same time. So let's go ahead and click Batch Production. You'll see the batch production come up, and you'll notice that you can use any projects or files from Camtasia in order to produce them all at the same time. Now, with the batch, you'll be able to determine whether or not you want to produce them all the same way or whether or not you want to produce them in a different way. So let's take a look at this. So we're going to go and click this Add Files button, and we're then going to find a number of Camtasia files and projects. What we're going to do here is pick up 2 Camtasia projects. And in order to highlight both of them, we can hit the Control button, and we can pick 2 at a time or 3 at a time or as many as we need to. Once we have all the files that we want, we can then click Open. Now, what's going to happen is that these files are now going to be placed inside of the batch production area. We can actually then go and pick more files and projects and add them to this batch production and produce them all at the same time. What we're going to do now is click the Next button. And when we get to this screen, what you'll notice is that you have a drop-down menu of all of the options that you have available. Now, what we could do is we could choose any one of these options. We could produce MP4s from standard to high definition, or the MP4 with the Smart Player from standard to high definition. Now, those are presets that are already part of our Camtasia elements for producing video. But we can go into the preset manager and we can actually set up a different preset so that we can produce videos in a different way according to some of the other ways that Camtasia will allow us to produce videos. So let's click the preset manager. And what you're going to notice is that we can then click the New button. We'll want to give this new project preset a name. And then we'll want to choose how we want the video to be produced. So let's choose AVI. Now, if we wanted to have an icon associated with this project, we could do that. Now, for the sake of time, we're not going to choose an icon, but you can choose one so that whenever you see visually the icon, you'll know that that preset represents the new project preset. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click Next. We're going to make sure that these settings reflect what we want in our video. Again, we're going to make sure that this reflects what we want in our video. And then we'll get to the last screen where we can change some of the options. So now what we're going to do is we're going to click Finish. Now we have a new project preset. So we can actually close out managing the production presets. So we are back now inside of our batch production, and we can choose a new project preset. Now we could also click this link, and what's going to happen is we're going to use a different production preset for each project. So we have two projects that we're producing in this batch, so we're going to produce them at the same time, but we're going to then use two different presets. Now what we'll need to do is we'll need to highlight this one, and then we can choose a different preset. We can highlight this one and then choose a different preset. So what this allows us to do is it allows us to start our batch production, walk away from it, but yet know that we have chosen all of the right formats for each video that's going to actually be produced. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click Next. We're going to choose the output folder. Now this is where it's actually going to be on your hard drive. Now one thing that we can do is we can organize all the produced files into subfolders. And so this is going to produce each individual video into its own subfolder. Now this can be helpful if you're not grouping your videos together, but if you are grouping your videos together or you're going to zip your file at the end, this can be especially helpful because you can go to each individual video, zip it, and then package it the way you want to have it packaged. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to click the Finish button. And what's going to happen is Camtasia is going to go through producing the videos. Now obviously these are practice videos and they're not going to take as long as they might take otherwise. You might have more videos than you see here, and your videos might take longer to produce. But this is the process of video production or video rendering. So what's going to happen is Camtasia is going to finish up the second video, and then we're going to have a new screen open up. Okay, so now what's going to happen is Camtasia will actually give you your production results. It'll show you what you have produced. And if we want to find the files that we just created, we would then click the Open Production folder. What you'll notice is that there are two folders with our video names. We can now close the production results, and that'll bring us back inside of Camtasia. And that is how you undertake a batch production. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to go over some elements in the Share menu. And you'll notice that the Share menu has local file, screencast, Vimeo, YouTube, Google Drive, and custom production. Each of these methods are ways that you can produce a video and package it and deliver it. Now the first you'll notice is called local file. Now this is going to give you a commonly used in Camtasia format of a video. So in order to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to open an existing project, and then we're going to go through some of the elements of being able to produce a video. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the file area. We're going to pick up a recent project. Okay, so now that we have the project open on our timeline, let's go through the various elements of the Share menu so you can understand how to produce videos from this menu. So we'll go to the Share menu and first go to Local File. What you'll notice is that Camtasia will open up a production wizard. You'll have several choices that you can use in order to produce your video. Once again, you'll see some of the same options that you saw in the Share menu. In fact, you'll see all of them. And so let's scroll up a little bit. We can produce this as a video that we're going to send to screencast, share to Vimeo, Google Drive, share to YouTube. So although it's a bit redundant, there are going to be some cases where you will be able to get these choices when you go through the final process of doing your video. Now, the most important distinction to make when you're looking at these choices are, first you'll see three choices at standard and high definition. And then you'll see similar choices at standard and high definition. Now the first set of choices means that you'll be producing an MP4 file, and that file used to upload to various services, various video sharing, and it's a commonly used format. Now you can also get the same MP4 file, but you can also deliver it with a smart player. And you can use a smart player when you have features in your video that you produced in Camtasia, such as interactive hotspots or quizzes or surveys. Any of those features will make it necessary for you to produce your video in the smart player format in order to get all of the features that you have delivered. So what we're going to do is we're going to produce this video at high definition to produce an MP4 file. I'm going to click Next. You're going to have the opportunity to save this as a certain name, so you can give this a name. And once again, Camtasia will give you the choice of organizing your products into subfolders so that everything associated with this video will be in one folder, separate from the rest of the files in this folder. Or you can have this file go directly into this folder without any other folder. So in other words, you'll have the new video saving MP4 file in this directory. If you use this feature, you'll have a folder named New Video Saving, and then the MP4 file within that folder. There are a couple of production options. You can choose to show the production results, and this will show you everything that has happened during the rendering or the production of your video. And then you can actually have your video play right after production. Whatever your preference is with respect to these two choices, you can use them. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and produce this local file, and we're going to click Finish. And then our video will start to produce. So we'll come back at the end once the video is complete. Okay, so now the video is completing. It will complete, and then Camtasia will open up. Now the video will start playing. We're going to close that out. You're going to notice that you're going to have all of the production elements in front of you. You'll be able to open the production folder. That'll tell you where your video will be. And as we suggested, you're going to have this new folder. And what we can do is we can take everything that we used in order to create this video to create a production preset, so that all we have to do is just reproduce the drop-down element to do exactly what we did this time with this video. And we're going to skip doing that this time, but we have just created a local file with our video. Once we click Finish, this window is actually going to go away, and then you'll have the editing screen again. Okay, now in the next video, we are going to take a look at producing a video for screencast.com. With that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to look at the share menu, and in particular, we're going to look at producing your video and uploading to screencast.com. Now before we actually go through the action, let's visit screencast.com. And when you visit screencast.com, you're going to notice that whether or not you are a customer of Snagit or Camtasia, you can actually use screencast.com. And let's take a look at the pricing. What you're going to notice is that you can either start off with a free account that'll give you at least 2 GB of space and 2 GB of monthly bandwidth. Now, that's not a lot if you're going to be serving video files, but it is enough to get you started so that you can understand how it's going to work with your business. Of course, if you want to start an account with screencast.com, it is $9.95 per month or $99 per year. Now, if you don't have an account with screencast.com, you'll probably want to start one that's going to be associated with your Camtasia program. So you can go ahead and sign in, or you can sign up for a free account. Now you'll have several uses for your screencast.com account, some that'll be associated with the use of Camtasia, some with the use of the program Jing if you use it, or even some with the use of the program Snagit if you use it. So screencast.com is a place where you can upload TextSmith files and you can use them in any way that your business dictates. So screencast.com is one place that we can use to house our produced videos from Camtasia, as well as to use the smart features such as quizzing or interactive hotspots. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the share menu and we're going to produce this video on screencast.com. So we're just going to click this link. And what you're going to notice is that you will need to sign in to screencast.com. So wherever you have your screencast.com account, you're going to want to put your name and email address in there and your password for the account. You can actually sign up for an account here through Camtasia. So if you haven't done that already, you can do it. You can use the Remember Me feature, so you don't have to continually put your email address and your password in every time. You can put it in actually once. Okay, so now that all of this has been pre-populated, we're going to go ahead and click the Next button. Now what's going to happen is Camtasia is going to access your Screencast account. It's going to have all of your folders by drop-down menu. It's going to actually give you some options to produce your video so that you can produce these videos with options. In this particular case, we don't have quizzes, but we could. If we had quizzes, we could upload our quizzes. We can upload our table of contents, and we have them. So all of the elements that are part of the smart player that we would typically have to produce locally, we can actually upload to screencast.com and have them work just as if they were local files. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click OK. And now what we're going to do is we're going to click Finish. We're going to assume that you have chosen the right screencast.com folder. Default folder is going to be Camtasia Studio. However, you can choose whatever folder you like inside of your screencast.com account. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click Finish. And then the rendering process will start. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to stop the video and we're going to come back at the end as the video is completing its rendering process. Okay, so our video is completing and it will get to 100% and then it will begin the final processing and it's going to open up and then upload to screencast.com. So you'll see we're getting to 100%. And then it's going to now upload, as you can see now, to screencast.com. Now when that process is complete, our browser is going to open. And our video will be automatically uploaded and it will automatically open to the place in screencast.com for us to be able to watch our video. What you're also going to get is you're going to get an embed code, which you can place on another website. So you can take this entire code by clicking the copy button. Once it's copied to the clipboard, you can then take this and put it on another website. What you can also do is if you want to pass on the URL to someone, you can copy the URL and this will give them access to the video that we just showed you in the previous screen. Okay, so that is uploading your videos to screencast.com. And remember, screencast.com is a place where you can actually upload your quizzing, you can upload your surveys, you can upload anything that you'll need to have with a smart player, such as interactive hotspots, and have them work. Typically, if you were to upload those features to another place, there'd be no way to upload the smart player, so they wouldn't work if you uploaded them to YouTube or Vimeo or even to Google. However, screencast.com, you can use all of those features along with the video that you produce. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to look at the share menu, and you'll notice that you have 3 websites online, platforms that you can use to house your video. One is Vimeo, which is a video sharing site. One that you're probably familiar with, YouTube, another video sharing site. and Google Drive, which is more of a storage site. All three places are potential destinations for you to be able to send your video once it has been produced. You can send it to Google Drive as a MP4 file. You can upload it to YouTube after you have produced, as well as uploading to Vimeo after you produce. In all three cases, you'll need to have an account set up prior to. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the process with YouTube. And you'll notice that Camtasia will assess whether or not you are signed in to your YouTube account. So what you're going to want to do is to click Sign In. Once you sign in, you are going to have to give Camtasia access to your account in YouTube. And what you're going to do is you're going to click Allow. And actually, when you are giving Camtasia permission, you're also giving permission for Google Drive also. So you can click the Allow button. And now you can actually close this entire browser and go back to Camtasia. And what you'll notice now is that Camtasia has populated a form that you can fill out with a description and tags, and you can determine how you want to upload the video to YouTube. So let's do that right now. Now, once you've determined the settings that you want for your YouTube video, you are going to click the Finish button, and then Camtasia can begin the process of producing and uploading to YouTube. We are going to stop the video here, and we're going to come back close to the end. Okay, so the process is completing. And now our video is uploading and processing. And now our video is fully uploaded to YouTube. Now you can go through a similar process once again for Vimeo and Google Drive. Google Drive, you will be able to store the file. Vimeo, you'll be able to play the file. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to go through some elements of the custom production of your video. And to do that, we're going to go to the Share menu, and then we're going to go to Custom Production. And then we're going to click New Custom Production, and that's going to open up the production wizard. So you'll notice at the very top, you have an MP4 Smart Player video. Now, of course, if we don't want to use a Smart Player, again, if we don't want to use a Smart Player, we can use one of the presets. But this is going to be an MP4 inside of a Smart Player with the HTML and all the coding, which will allow us to have all the elements with our videos, such as interactive hotspots, surveys, quizzes, markers for table of contents, and all of those other factors. So in each one of these cases, you'll be able to produce your video as a Windows Media file, an AVI file. If you wanted to produce a GIF and you had a short video, you could actually produce a GIF with Camtasia. If you wanted to produce audio only, you would be able to produce this in the format of M4A. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the features of the MP4 Smart Player that you would actually be customizing. You're going to notice that you can customize the look and feel of your controller. You can choose not to have a controller. You can choose to pause it at the start. And you can auto hide the controls. You can choose the size of your video. So in other words, you can choose the size at which the video will embed, making sure you keep the aspect ratio, and then the video size, which will depend on your editing dimensions. You can make changes to the frame rate and your H.264 profile. You can do the same with your audio settings, changing the bit rate. And you'll get to the options section, and the only way that this will be valid is if you have elements in your video that you can actually use some of these features, making it searchable, using captions, quizzes, or even a table of contents. And in each one of the cases, And we're going to go back to the beginning because we can do this same thing with each one of the videos. Each one of the videos has customizable elements. So we're going to go back. We'll look at the AVI. Each one has customizable elements. So in each case, you're going to want to select the production that will actually deliver the content that you actually want to have. Now, the MP4 audio does not necessarily fit most situations where you're going to be using it in a Windows environment or MP3 environment. Now, there is a workaround to that, which we will talk about in another video. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to go over some recording basics. And the first kind of recording we're going to go over is going to be capturing video. Now anytime you do a screen share video, you can actually add in your image or your talking head video of yourself. And you do that by using this feature, which is your webcam or your camera that's set up with Camtasia. Now, what you'll need to do is you'll need to take the drop-down arrow and you'll need to choose one of these webcams. And once you do that, then you'll be able to record your webcam along with the PowerPoint or along with the screen share video. Now, what you can also do is you can also do a talking head video. That's video of yourself speaking into the camera with this feature. So either way, whether or not you want to add the video into the picture with your information, or you just want to take the video by yourself, you can do that. So the first thing that we need to do is to choose the camera. Now, when we choose the camera will automatically then be turned on for use with your recording toolbar. So we're going to choose, in this particular case, this webcam, the Logitech webcam C930E. You may have a different webcam, or you may have a webcam that is fixed with your PC. Either way, choose the webcam and then your webcam will be turned on. Now you're going to notice, even though the image is blurred out, that you have an image that is there, and that is the image that you are capturing. It's a sample of the capture. And if you hover over that image, you will then be able to see exactly what's going to be captured. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to click the record button and we're going to start capturing video. We're not looking to do screen share video. We're not necessarily looking to do PowerPoint video. We're looking to capture the talking head video, which is video of ourselves speaking into the camera. And you can do that with Camtasia 9. So let's go ahead and click the record button. Again, this appears here because we're using two instances of Camtasia to record each other. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And then the countdown will begin. Now you'll notice that the Camtasia camera is hidden. It's in the toolbar. We can hover over it so that we can see where it is. And we are capturing the video as we're talking into the camera. And what's going to happen right now is that we're going to stop this video and then we're going to start the edit process. So we're going to go to this area, and typically what you would do is you would hit the F10 button. But in this particular case, because we're using two instances of Camtasia, you can't do that. And what we'll need to do is we'll need to physically stop the video. So we're going to pull up the player and we're going to hit the stop button. And when that happens, you're going to notice two things. You're going to notice that we have the screen that you were watching. We also have here in the corner, we have the video that we were shooting, which is the talking head video. We also have two videos in the timeline. We have on track 2, the talking head video, and we have the screen here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to get rid of the screen. So we're going to highlight this, and then we're going to click delete. So now all we really have is the black background. Now what we can do right now is we can now bring this image into the center of the canvas and then expand it so that it can be seen. Okay, so now we have our video. Remember, we can control the size and scale of the video in the properties area here on the right hand side, but we have captured the video where it is. Now if we want to make enhancements like annotations and transitions and behaviors, we can do that with this video, and we can tell exactly what's going to happen in the video by dragging the timeline. So for example, if what we want to do is we want to add some words and we want to add something on this top corner here, we could do that. And we could do that by going to the annotations area and by dragging this into the timeline or into the circle and then sizing it down. We can determine how long we want it to appear in the timeline. And if we don't like it, we can just take it out. So any of the videos that we have been using as enhancements, annotations, behaviors, animations, or transitions, we can add into this talking head video. Remember, if we want to do an effect like having this video appear off to the right, we can use the animations element. We use the tilt right or the tilt left, and we can do anything with this particular part of the video that we actually want, and all we need to do is to drag the element into the timeline with the actual video, or in the case of annotations, we can drag the element on top of the video on a different track. Now remember, in rendering the video, if we want to produce a local file or an MP4, we can do that here. If we want to have interactivity online, but we don't want to host that interactivity and host the video, we can send it to screencast.com. If we want to have the MP4 without any of the interactivity, we can put it on Vimeo, YouTube, or Google Drive, or we can create our own smart player using either custom production or the local file feature. Okay, so those are the basics of capturing video inside of Camtasia, and you can actually size this video however you want inside of the canvas, however you want it to appear. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. You are now looking at google.com. You are looking at the web browser Chrome, and you are looking at your Camtasia recorder. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to go over a few basics of recording activity that you undertake on your screen. And this is a very simple process. You can decide on whether or not you'd like your video image to appear or your talking head video. You can have that video record yourself as you describe what you're seeing on your screen. It's going to appear in the right-hand side, but you'll be able to move that video any place in the editing process. So even though it'll appear on the timeline, you decide where that video is going to appear. And all you'll need to do before you start recording is to turn your camera on, just as we did in the last video, deciding on where the camera is. In most cases, that is probably not what you are going to do. Now, one thing that you are going to want to do is you're going to want to decide whether or not you're going to record the entire screen where you're recording, or you're going to record a portion of the screen. Either way, you can do this with Camtasia. So for example, let's decide that we are going to determine what we're going to record by looking at this menu. And we can decide whether or not we're going to record in widescreen. In most cases, that will be your entire screen. That will make it full screen. Now, the other aspect of this that you are going to want to be aware of is whether or not your recording area and your recording standard is going to be standard, which is 4:3, or widescreen, which is 16:9. If possible, if your video is going to be seen on YouTube or any other video sharing site, you're going to want to use the widescreen standard. And once you have decided how you're going to record your screen, if you have not done so already, you're going to want to make sure that you have the right microphone, that you want to actually have recording. And once you've done that, you are going to want to hit the record button. When you hit the record button, this recording toolbar will go into your toolbar at the bottom, and your screen, everything that you'll be showing on it, will be live in the video, and you will be live as you describe it. So if you want to do the actions, you'll be able to do them in silence, or you'll be able to talk people through it. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the record button, and we're going to advance through a few pages and then have the video come up in the editing process. And once again, in most cases, if you are going to use two screens, you're going to want to slide this to the right or slide it back. And you can decide on which screen you're going to use by clicking this custom button. And here's what you're going to notice. You're going to notice that this screen, or the recording area, is going to be on the screen that you're looking in front of you. However, what would happen if we wanted to move this screen to another one that we're actually using? We can click our mouse and drag the screen to the screen. Now, it's going to appear off the recording screen that you're looking at, but the new recording screen, or what's about to be recorded, is now on a second screen on the left-hand side. You can't see it because we have moved the recording area to another screen. We can move that recording area back to our screen. And if we want to make sure that we get the entire screen, we're just then going to go and click full screen, and that's going to give us the entire screen. And you want to do all of this before you start recording. You don't want to do this in the middle of your recording. In fact, it's not even possible to do. However, what you don't want to have is you don't want to have a situation where you're trying to make up for the fact that you didn't do this ahead of time. Try to set your recording up ahead of time so that you have the screen you're going to be recording on. And again, you can toggle back and forth before the video starts using the custom and full screen features. Okay, so now all we'll need to do in order to get started, now once again, this recording toolbar, typically it's not going to be where you are if you're using two screens. It's going to be off to the right or off to the left, depending on how you have your screen situated. And you're just going to click record. Now remember, we're going to see a little warning message there, and that's because we're using two instances of Camtasia. Okay, so there's a warning message. We're going to click OK, and then we're going to get the countdown. Okay, so now we're recording. We'll just scroll through these few instances. And what we're going to do now is we're going to stop the video. Now, once again, typically what you would do to stop your Camtasia video is you would hit the Control F10 button. However, in this case, we can't do it because we're using two instances of Camtasia on this video, but you can use it when you are actually recording. We can find out where our recording toolbar is by highlighting or hovering over it. But once again, you don't want to do this in the actual video because this part will actually show up in your video, which you probably do not want. So for the sake of stopping the video so that you can see it, we're going to pull the recording toolbar into our space, and we're going to click Stop Video. Now, one aspect of this that you're going to want to be aware of is you can click the Add Marker button if you feel as if you have something that you want to mark during the course of the video. Maybe there's an occurrence, or maybe you had an error. Maybe there's something that you didn't do. You can click the Add Marker button, and these markers will be part of your recording. Okay, so with that, we're going to click the Stop button so that we can stop the process, and then the video can come into our editing timeline. So let's click Stop here. And what you're going to notice are a couple of things. Number one, if you look down in track 1, what you'll notice is that there's a marker there. There's a marker here. There's a marker here. And those are the 4 times that we actually hit the marker button. And we can see those markers if we go to the timeline. And we click markers, and you'll see them. So we're going to get rid of that for now. And this is the point at which, if you want to add things on top of your video, you would use the Annotations button. If you want to transition between subjects, you could do that. And remember, that process is that we would find the place in between subjects or places in the video. We would then make sure we have that portion highlighted. And then we're going to hit the split button. Once we hit the split button, then all we're going to do is we are going to then drag our transition into that area. And so what will happen is you'll actually have a transition to happen, however you've dragged it in. So you can decide on which of the effects that you are going to use, which ones are going to be most effective. In annotations, you can decide on behaviors or even animations. So we'll talk a little more about those things in the editing basics video. But with that, we have completed our recording basics video. You've now learned how to do a basic screen share video, and you are now ready with all of the other instances of understanding what happens in the effects area. You can go back and look at any of those individual videos to figure out which one you want to use, as well as understanding what happens on the timeline. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we are going to start working with PowerPoint or your presentation software. And we are going to take a look at PowerPoint in particular. And to start, we're going to go to the add-in section of Camtasia. Now, if you install the Camtasia add-in when you first started, you'll have this set of controls as part of your PowerPoint. And it is a TechSmith addition to PowerPoint. Now, in order to record your PowerPoint presentation, all you'll need to do is to click the record button. But before you do that, you are going to want to take a look at some of the controls. So let's take a look at the Camtasia recording options for the PowerPoint. Now, you're going to notice that there are certain aspects of using your recorder, and all of these things are going to be adjustable. Now, you'll notice that you can edit the PowerPoint presentation in Camtasia after it has been completed, and there are some advantages to recording your presentation this way. Now, the disadvantage is the difficulty with using this method as well as integrating your screen share video. So if you want to record your screen at the same time, it's possible. It's just a little more difficult logistically. So what we're going to do is we are going to do some recording with our Camtasia. We're going to allow it then to be opened in Camtasia. Okay, let's go ahead and click OK. And then let's click the record button. And what we're going to do is we're going to click begin to record. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by using this button. Now, what's going to happen is this button is going to disappear once we actually start the recording process. So now we are now recording. So we're going to scroll through these pieces. And then we're going to stop the process. Camtasia is going to request that we save this video. And then we'll get the choice of either producing our recording or editing our recording, and we are going to choose to edit. So what's going to happen is that Camtasia is going to bring this file now into our media bin. And what we're going to do is we are going to now add it to the timeline at the playhead. So taking a closer look at the actual file, and we can take a closer look by expanding it. So we're going to zoom in. It's the same file, we're just making it easy to view. What you're going to notice right away is that you'll see markers in the track at each point. If we want to see those markers, all we need to do is turn on the marker timeline. Now, what you're going to notice about those markers is that they denote things that are happening inside of the video. So, for example, if we drag to this first marker, you'll notice that the slide changes. If we drag to another marker, you'll notice that the slide changes again. If we drag to another marker, you'll notice that the slide changes again. If we drag to this marker, then the video ends. It says presentation pause, as you can see it. And you can actually see the names of the slides in the markers. So for example, if we click this link, you'll see that this is the slide Optimal Computer Setup. And this is one of the advantages of using PowerPoint to record. We can actually come back to our editing process and we can edit based on how we have these points situated in the actual video recording. Of course, we could do this manually, but it would be more difficult to do it that way. Now, once again, it's a little more difficult if you want to integrate screen sharing video during the recording process, but the TREC file or the recording file is easier to manage because the interaction between Camtasia and PowerPoint gives us these markers automatically when we set up the screen recording. Now, we would edit this recording just as if we would edit any other one. And of course, we would have audio and then anything that we want to add from our effects menu, we could do that. Okay, so now in the next video, what we're going to do is we are going to go over how you would record PowerPoint if you chose not to use the add-in. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to talk about recording your presentations and an alternative to the last video. And basically, we're talking about doing a screen recording, except you're going to run your presentation on your screen. And the advantage to doing this is, and we're going to slide the recorder off to the right, is that it makes it very easy for us to bring up a browser, like we're doing right now, and then to record onto this browser, just like we're doing right here on screen. We can close out the browser. We can bring back a browser. Very easy and very convenient to do, a little more clunky and a little more difficult to do with the other method. Now, the other thing is going to be that this method of recording actually works best if you have at least two screens. First, that you'd be able to, again, slide your recording toolbar off to the right and to be able to watch it in terms of the timing. And then also for you to be able to see your PowerPoint presentation progress. And so we'll show you what we mean by that. Now we click slideshow and we start the slideshow from the beginning. What's going to happen is this is going to be your recording screen, the one that you're going to see right in front of you. However, there is another screen that PowerPoint actually brings before you, and it is the information screen. What we're going to do is we are going to swap the presenter view and slideshow. So now you can see that view. And in fact, this is the screen that you should have away from your recording screen, but it actually tracks where you are in your presentation. You can actually advance the slides in this part of your presentation. Now you can also advance the slides in the other form, and if we want to switch those slides, we go to Display Settings and we swap the presenter and slideshow view. That brings us back to this screen. And what we'll need to do in order to advance our slides is we are going to just make sure that we have tapped into this screen once. And then what we can do is we can use the arrow keys. We can use the page up or page down key. We can use any of these keys that we want in order to keep from having to use the mouse to approach the screen so that our cursor appears there. So once again, the real benefit of using this way, the screen sharing, is that we have got to bring any application on. It's very easy to do using this method. Okay, now there is a slight variation when we are actually recording. And if we're going to record, we are going to want to use the markers that we are actually given. So for example, we might record. I'm going to get rid of this. And so our recording starts. So in order to show you this, we're going to bring our recording toolbar. Now again, remember that one of the things that we can do is we can use a marker. Right? So when we scroll to the point at which our slide changes, we can issue a marker. And we can do this again. When our slide changes, we can issue a marker. Our slide changes, we can issue a marker. And those markers are going to appear on our timeline when we get ready to do our edit. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to stop this video and allow it to be placed into our media bin. So we click stop. And you'll see our markers here, where each slide actually changes. And that should be the case in our timeline. Right now, the timing isn't going to be exact, but it will be present. If we've got to go back and edit based on those slides, we can do that. So again, all we're really doing when we record a slide presentation in this way is that we are actually doing a screen recording, except that we are actually running our PowerPoint presentation on our screen. So we're going to switch the display settings again so that you can see one aspect of actually doing a PowerPoint presentation. Now remember, this is going to be off screen if you're using at least 2 screens, which is highly recommended if you're going to do a PowerPoint presentation video. And one of the reasons why is that let's say that you have to skip ahead and you decide that what you want to do is you want to use another one of these slides. Well, you can do that, and you can actually have it so that this will be the next point in your presentation. So if we switch back to the presentation view, you'll notice that that slide is now showing. So let's switch those display settings back so you can see that again. We go to this see all slides, and again, this you would not be watching this if you have 2 screens. This will be off to the side. We can switch this, and then we can just switch back to the presenter view. Okay, so that's it with our alternative for creating PowerPoint presentations. And with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to go over some editing basics. And in order to do that, we're going to need to do some recording. And the reason that we need to start with the recording session is that one of the best practices for recording and editing video is for you to record your video in one session, even if you make mistakes, and to note when you make those mistakes, and then to make them visible on your timeline. And we've noted a couple of ways to do that. One of the ways in which you can do that, of course, is to use the markers. And we've seen that. In fact, we will turn on the recording so that we can see this again. And we're going to bring the recording toolbar into the screen. Now remember, one of the ways that which we can note and we can give ourselves a visual cue that a mistake was made and we need to go back to the timeline and edit can be if we use the add marker. So every place where we add a marker, we'll know that we need to look on our timeline to figure out what it is that we need to do to edit out our mistakes. Now, one of the other ways that presenters often do this in Camtasia is that they will clap 3 times very loudly so that the claps will appear on the timeline. And the claps will go something like this. And what will happen is you'll see these claps on the timeline. That'll be your cue to go back and then to edit your recording. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to record some video and we're going to go over a few mistakes. We're going to clap 3 times as well as to add markers so that we'll know where we are doing our mistakes. Now the actual recording process, we're going to do this off camera. But we are going to have our recording to appear on the timeline when we come back. So we're going to stop our recording now, and then we're going to continue the recording that you're seeing on your screen, and then we will come back once this video is up and ready to be edited on the timeline. Okay, welcome back. You're going to see now that the video is now on the editing timeline, and the best practice for editing video is to edit in real time. Now, this can be time consuming and it can be more time consuming than if you were to skip ahead and look only for your mistakes. However, what you're going to want to think about is that you want to make sure that if possible, you eliminate, even sometimes if there's not a technical grammatical mistake or something that you stumbled over, you're going to hear certain things that just don't sound right. And the only way for you to correct them is for you to watch the video over and hear it. If you adhere to the 5-minute rule, which is you're trying to keep all your videos right around 5 minutes, then this should not be a hardship to you. One of the things you're going to notice right off the bat is that the audio looks to be low. So we're going to go ahead and put our cursor in that timeline. And then we're going to come up here to the right-hand side and we're going to raise the audio, right? And you can see the audio jumping there. The one other good practice to use would be to try to do some noise elimination right at the start. And we can do that in the audio effects area. And we want to do some noise removal. And we can do that by dragging this into the timeline. Right now, we can decide on how sensitive we want it to be, but in general, this should remove additional background noise, and Camtasia actually does the analysis. So we're going to do the analysis. Camtasia then generates the audio profile and then does the removal. Okay, so now we have our audio pretty much where we want. What we're going to do is, let's say that what we wanted to do was we wanted to go where these markers were. And we're going to say that this is where we made mistakes. Well, what we do is we bring our cursor to that point. We take the right handle, pull it all the way over to that point, and then cut it out. And what happens is Camtasia will collapse the timeline to the point where the cursor is. So in other words, you won't have a gap where the cursor is and where you make the cut. Camtasia will bring that timeline back against your cursor. So what we also did is we also know that where we have 3 claps, we are going to have a mistake. Now again, it's going to be a good idea to listen to what the mistake actually is. And once you've decided exactly where you want it, you are then going to want to pull the cursor together and then cut out that mistake. Now, what we want to do is we want to see where the rest of the mistakes are. And so what we're going to do is we're going to shrink our view of the timeline so that we can see better, we can see more of it. And we can see that there is a mistake here. Now, there are a couple of things about making edits to audio and video at the same time. What we can do is we can actually spread out the audio, and that makes these lines the peaks more visible. And if we have to put our cursor in between a peak, sometimes those peaks will not be visible if they come from a shrunken timeline. So sometimes we can expand the timeline so that we can see the gap, and we can see the one right there where we would put our cursor and then cover over our mistake. Now, once again, we can listen to what's really happening on the video by clicking the start button. As soon as we start to play the video, we'll be able to hear exactly what the mistake is and exactly what we need to do in order to fix it and cut it off. So once again, what we can do is we can zoom back out. Now, anything that we're going to be adding to the timeline, we can do that using annotations. We can do that with animations or cursor effects. Now, one interesting thing as we are talking about cursor effects, if you are doing a screencast video, cursor effects will allow you to, again, highlight your cursor and highlight the sounds of the mouse clicks. And this can be a very useful way of keeping your viewers engaged. So in this particular case, let's say that what we wanted to do was we wanted to highlight the cursor every place that it went. Well, we could do that if we brought our cursor back, then we right click. Actually, what we're going to do is just drag that into the media. And now what you'll see here is that you have a highlight every place where your cursor is going to appear in the actual screen. Okay, now the other thing that we're going to want to take note of during the editing process is sometimes we might cover sensitive information, and we talked about this. And when that is the case, we want to bring our cursor to where that sensitive information is. And then what we want to do is we want to then add in an annotation. And we want that annotation to be a blur. Right? And let's say we'll find the blur. We will drag it onto the canvas, and then we'll blur it out. Then we'll decide how long that blur goes. Right? If we know that it needs to appear this long, then we'll just stretch it out here. Okay, to make things more convenient, we're going to get rid of our markers now. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that your video appears exactly the way you want and that it sounds exactly the way you want. And you're going to be using the effects last. The most important thing is that the audio does what you want it to do and that the video does what you want it to do. Now remember, one other aspect is that we can have, when we record our camera, it'll be off to the right here, but we can move it any place onto our screen that we want it to appear. Okay, so those are our editing basics. Remember to try to edit in real time. Remember to try to set your mistakes in your recording at the very beginning. And then remember to try to do all of your editing in one sitting. That will help you to be able to do an effective editing job, as well as being able to add in all of the extras that Camtasia will allow you to do, which we have talked about in previous videos. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video.